Hello there, friend. Thank you for joining me tonight. I'm grateful you've chosen to spend this quiet time exploring one of the most fascinating mysteries our universe might be hiding. Tonight, we're going to wander through the shadowy possibility that time travelers walk among us. We'll explore the physics that makes it possible, the strange evidence that makes us wonder, and the profound questions that emerge when yesterday and tomorrow might share the same sidewalk. The same sidewalk. Before we begin our journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you listening from right now? And what time is it where you are? I love imagining all the different moments and places where these words find you. If you enjoy these gentle explorations into the mysteries of science, please consider subscribing and giving this video a like. Your support helps me continue creating these calm journeys through the wonders of our universe. Here's a playful thought. If time travelers are really here, maybe one of them is listening to this right now, chuckling at how close we're getting to the truth. Or perhaps they're taking notes on how quaint our 21st century understanding of time really is. So settle in, get comfortable, and let your mind drift as we explore the beautiful possibility that time isn't quite as linear as we think. Close your eyes if you'd like, and let's begin this temporal adventure together. Picture a young patent clerk in Switzerland, scribbling equations that would forever change how we understand time itself. Albert Einstein gave humanity something extraordinary, the revelation that time isn't the steady, unchanging river we thought it was. Instead, time is more like a gentle stream that can speed up, slow down, and even pool in unexpected places. Before Einstein, we imagined time as a cosmic metronome, ticking away at the same rate everywhere in the universe. But his special theory of relativity showed us something far more beautiful and strange. Time, Einstein discovered, dances with speed and gravity in ways that make temporal travel not just possible, but inevitable. Think about this remarkable truth right now. As you listen to these words, time is moving differently for you than it is for someone flying in an aeroplane overhead. The pilot experiences time just a tiny bit slower than you do. It's an almost imperceptible difference, but it's real. When that pilot lands, they will have aged microseconds less than you have during their flight. They've traveled, ever so slightly, into your future. This phenomenon, called time dilation, becomes more dramatic as speeds approach the speed of light. Imagine a twin who travels to a distant star at 90% the speed of light. When they return, they might find their earthbound sibling has aged decades while they've aged only years. The traveling twin has effectively journeyed into the future, stepping off their spacecraft into a world that has moved on without them. But Einstein's revelations about time go even deeper. His general theory of relativity showed us that massive objects actually warp the fabric of time itself. Near a black hole, time moves so slowly compared to the rest of the universe that what feels like minutes to someone approaching the event horizon might be years to distant observers. It's as if the universe has provided us with natural time machines, scattered throughout the cosmos like cosmic way stations. These aren't just theoretical curiosities. Or GPS satellites orbiting Earth must constantly adjust their clocks because time moves faster for them than it does for us on the surface. Without these relativistic corrections, your navigation would be off by miles within hours. Every day, technology quietly confirms Einstein's strange gift to humanity. The implications ripple outward like waves in a temporal pond. Quock. If time can be stretched and compressed, if it can be twisted by gravity and bent by velocity, then perhaps it can be navigated. Perhaps someone, somewhere, has learned to swim against time's current instead of simply floating downstream with the rest of us. Einstein himself was troubled by some of these possibilities. He worried about the paradoxes and contradictions that time travel might create. But his equations, those beautiful mathematical poems written in the language of the universe, seem to whisper that time travel isn't just possible, it's woven into the very fabric of reality. As we drift deeper into this mystery, imagine that Einstein's gift to humanity wasn't just knowledge, but a key that someone, perhaps in our future, has learned to turn. The door to temporal travel stands slightly ajar, and the question that haunts us is simple: has anyone already stepped through? Imagine reality as a vast, invisible trampoline, stretching infinitely in all directions. This isn't just empty space, Nike, it's space-time, the stage upon which every moment of existence performs its cosmic dance. And like any fabric, it can be stretched, compressed, folded, and perhaps even torn. When you drop a bowling ball onto a trampoline, it creates a depression that causes smaller objects to roll toward it. This is gravity, but not as we usually imagine it. Gravity isn't a force pulling objects together. It's the curvature of space-time itself, caused by the presence of mass and energy. The Earth doesn't pull you down. You're simply following the curved path that our planet's mass creates in the fabric of reality. Now imagine what happens when you take that trampoline and give it a sharp twist. The fabric wrinkles, creating shortcuts between distant points. In the geography of space-time, these wrinkles might allow travelers to step from one moment to another, from one year to the next, as easily as crossing a room. The universe, it seems, has provided blueprints for temporal architecture. But space-time is even stranger than a simple trampoline. It's a four-dimensional tapestry where space and time are woven together so intimately that they cannot be separated. When you move through space, you're also moving through time. When you sit perfectly still, you're racing through time at the speed of light. We are all time travelers, surfing the temporal waves of space-time, whether we realize it or not. The fabric of space-time responds to energy in fascinating ways. Rotate a massive object fast enough, and it drags space-time around with it like honey being stirred by a spoon. This frame-dragging effect means that space and time themselves can be set in motion. Near a spinning black hole, space-time itself is carried along in the rotation, creating regions where the distinction between moving forward and backward in time becomes beautifully blurred. Perhaps most intriguingly, the fabric of space-time might contain natural seams, places where the weave is looser, more willing to bend. These cosmic weak points could be the universe's own time portals, waiting for someone clever enough to find them and brave enough to use them. The fabric of reality might be riddled with temporal doorways, hidden in plain sight. Einstein's field equations suggest that space-time can be curved so severely that it loops back on itself, creating what physicists call closed time-like curves. These mathematical structures are like temporal roundabouts in the highway of causality, allowing travelers to arrive at their destination before they left. The universe's own geometry might provide the pathways for journeys through time. Consider the possibility that space-time has memory, or that the fabric itself retains impressions of everything that has ever happened or ever will happen. If this is true, then the past and future aren't distant countries, but neighboring rooms in the mansion of existence. A sufficiently advanced civilization might learn to read these space-time memories, to navigate between the temporal chambers of reality. The fabric of space-time also trembles with gravitational waves, ripples, in reality itself, that travel at the speed of light. These waves carry information about the most violent events in the universe, but they also demonstrate that space-time is dynamic, alive, constantly in motion. If space-time can ripple, perhaps it can also be surfed. Some theoretical physicists propose that the fabric of space-time might be quantized at the smallest scales, made up of discrete units, smaller than anything we can imagine. If this is true, then space-time itself might be programmable, like a cosmic computer running the software of reality. Someone who understood this programming language might be able to rewrite the code of causality itself. The beauty of space-time is that it connects everything to everything else. Your breakfast this morning and the birth of the first stars are part of the same four-dimensional sculpture. The fabric of space-time doesn't just allow for time travel, it suggests that in some sense, all of time exists simultaneously, waiting to be explored by those who know how to navigate its hidden dimensions. As we contemplate this magnificent tapestry of existence, we must wonder if space-time can be bent and twisted, if it can loop back on itself and create shortcuts through the dimensions of reality. Perhaps someone has already learned to tailor this fabric to their needs. Perhaps time travelers don't break the laws of physics. They simply know how to use the universe's own cosmic sewing machine. In the marriage between theoretical physics and wild possibility, some of the most beautiful children are born. These are the scientific concepts that sound like science fiction, but emerge from the most rigorous mathematics our species has ever developed. They whisper of doorways through time, of cosmic elevators between moments, of the universe's own hidden transportation system. Consider the wormhole, perhaps the most elegant solution to the puzzle of time travel. Picture space-time as a vast sheet of paper, and imagine folding it so that two distant points touch. Then imagine poking a hole through both layers, creating a tunnel that connects what were once separate regions. This is a wormhole, a hypothetical passage through space-time that could connect not just distant places, but distant times. The mathematics of wormholes flows naturally from Einstein's equations, like poetry written in the language of physics. These structures, if they exist, would create shortcuts through the fabric of reality itself. A traveler entering a wormhole might step out moments, years, or centuries before they entered. The universe, it seems, has provided blueprints for temporal architecture that would make any science fiction writer weep with joy. But wormholes are delicate creatures. Most would collapse the instant anything tried to pass through them, like soap bubbles popping at the slightest touch. To keep a wormhole open, you would need something called exotic matter, matter with negative energy density, hull that pushes space-time apart instead of pulling it together. Hull, this is matter that behaves opposite to everything we know, like anti-gravity made manifest. The beautiful irony is that quantum mechanics, that strange and wonderful theory of the very small, might provide exactly the exotic matter needed to stabilize wormholes. In the quantum realm, particles pop in and out of existence, borrowing energy from the universe's bank account and paying it back so quickly that the cosmic accountants never notice. This quantum foam might be the key to keeping temporal doorways open. Another pathway to time travel emerges from the concept of closed time-like curves. These are regions of space-time where the geometry is so warped that following a straight line through space and time brings you back to where you started, but in your own past. It's like discovering that the universe has roundabouts in the highway of causality, allowing travelers to loop back to earlier moments. The physicist Kurt Gödel, famous for his incompleteness theorems in mathematics, discovered that Einstein's equations allow for rotating universes where closed time-like curves exist everywhere. In Gödel's universe, every point in space-time is connected to its own past. While our universe doesn't seem to rotate in this way, Gödel's discovery proved that the mathematics of general relativity doesn't forbid time travel, races it. More recently, physicists have explored the possibility of creating time machines using cosmic strings, i.e. hypothetical one-dimensional defects in space-time that might have formed in the early universe. Two cosmic strings moving past each other at high speed could create a region where time travel becomes possible. The universe might have scattered these temporal tools throughout the cosmos like seeds of possibility. Even more exotic is the concept of traversable wormholes that could be created artificially. The physicist Kip Thorne showed that with enough exotic matter and precise engineering, an advanced civilization might be able to construct their own doorways through time. These wouldn't be natural phenomena, but cosmic engineering projects, built by beings who have learned to manipulate the fundamental structure of reality. The quantum world offers its own mysterious pathways to temporal travel. Quantum entanglement creates instantaneous connections between particles regardless of distance, suggesting that the universe has its own communication network that transcends time. Some physicists speculate that quantum mechanics might allow for closed time-like curves at the microscopic level, creating a foundation for macroscopic time travel. Perhaps most intriguingly, the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that every quantum event splits reality into multiple timelines. If this is true, then time travel might not change the past, but instead navigate between different versions of history. A time traveler might be able to visit alternate timelines, where different choices were made, different events unfolded, different futures bloomed. The Alcubierre drive, proposed by physicist Miguel Alcubierre, suggests a way to travel faster than light without violating relativity. By contracting spacetime in front of a spacecraft and expanding it behind, a vessel could surf on a wave of distorted spacetime. While designed for interstellar travel, the same principles might apply to temporal journeys, riding waves of spacetime into the past or future. As we contemplate these mathematical marvels, we must remember that the universe is under no obligation to make sense to us. The same physics that creates stars and galaxies also creates the possibility of time travel. The equations don't distinguish between what seems reasonable and what seems impossible. Midas simply describe what is mathematically permissible in the grand design of existence. The question that haunts us is whether these theoretical possibilities have become practical realities. Somewhere in the vast expanse of space and time, has someone learned to navigate these exotic pathways? Have they discovered how to open the universe's own doors to yesterday and tomorrow? Deep in the earth, archaeologists sometimes uncover mysteries that make them question everything they thought they knew about human history. These are the artifacts that seem to whisper of visitors from another time, objects that appear impossibly advanced for their supposed age, like finding a smartphone in a medieval castle or a computer chip in a pharaoh's tomb. Consider the Antikythera mechanism discovered in a shipwreck off the Greek coast. This bronze device, over 2,000 years old, contains gears and mechanisms so sophisticated that scientists initially thought it was contamination from a modern ship. When they finally decoded its purpose, they found something extraordinary. An ancient computer designed to predict the movements of celestial bodies with stunning accuracy. The Greeks, it seems, had created technology that wouldn't be seen again for another 1,000 years. The precision of this device is breathtaking. It could predict solar eclipses decades in advance, track the cycles of the moon, and follow the wandering paths of the planets across the sky. The gears were cut with such precision that they rival modern clockwork. How did ancient craftsmen create something so advanced without the benefit of precision tools and centuries of accumulated knowledge? Some whisper that the Antikythera mechanism represents knowledge from the future, delivered to the ancient world by temporal visitors. Perhaps someone from our time, or beyond, left this gift of astronomical wisdom in the hands of ancient Greeks. The technology is so far ahead of its time that it seems like a deliberate deposit from another era. But the Antikythera mechanism is not alone in its temporal mystery. The Baghdad battery, discovered in Iraq, appears to be a 2,000-year-old electrical device. Whole Davia jars containing copper cylinders and iron rods that, when filled with an acidic solution, generate electrical current. Why would ancient peoples need electricity? What did they power with these primitive batteries? The precision of ancient stonework also defies easy explanation. The megalithic structures at Pumapunku in Bolivia feature stone blocks cut and fitted with such accuracy that a sheet of paper cannot slide between them. These massive stones are arranged in complex patterns that require mathematical knowledge supposedly unknown to ancient peoples. Some blocks weigh over 100 tons and are positioned with precision that would challenge modern construction techniques. The mystery deepens when we consider that these stones were quarried from locations miles away and transported across difficult terrain. How did ancient peoples move such massive blocks without modern machinery? The conventional explanation involves ramps, rollers, and human labor, but the scale and precision of these projects suggest knowledge and capabilities that seem borrowed from another time. Perhaps most intriguingly, some ancient artifacts appear to contain knowledge of the microscopic world. The Vedic texts of ancient India describe atomic theory in remarkable detail, discussing the smallest units of matter in ways that parallel modern physics. These texts speak of atoms and subatomic particles with a precision that wouldn't be achieved by Western science until the 20th century. Ancient maps present another temporal puzzle. The Piri-Reis map, created in 1513, shows the coastline of Antarctica with remarkable accuracy, despite the fact that Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, even more mysterious. The map appears to show the continent as it would look without ice, suggesting knowledge of Antarctica's true geography that we only acquired through modern sonar and satellite mapping. The Nazca lines in Peru present a different kind of temporal mystery. These massive geoglyphs, visible only from the air, were created by a civilization that supposedly had no knowledge of flight. The lines form intricate patterns and animal shapes that span miles across the desert floor. They seem designed to be viewed from above, as if created for aerial observers who wouldn't exist for another 1,000 years. Some archaeologists have discovered artifacts that appear to show ancient knowledge of genetics, astronomy, and advanced mathematics. Cave paintings in France seem to depict DNA helixes. Ancient Sumerian texts describe our solar system with an accuracy that suggests telescopic observation. Mathematical concepts appear in ancient cultures long before they were supposedly developed. The mystery of ancient crystal skulls adds another layer to this temporal puzzle. These artifacts, crafted from single pieces of quartz crystal, display a level of precision that challenges our understanding of ancient capabilities. Modern analysis suggests they were created with tools and techniques that didn't exist in the ancient world. The skulls seem to have been carved against the natural grain of the crystal, something that would require diamond-tipped tools and advanced knowledge of crystal structure. Could these artifacts be evidence of time travelers sharing advanced knowledge with ancient civilizations? Perhaps visitors from our future have been quietly seeding humanity's past with gifts of technology and wisdom, carefully advancing our development while maintaining the illusion of natural progression. The alternative explanation is that ancient peoples possessed knowledge and capabilities far beyond what we credit them with is almost as intriguing as the time travel hypothesis. Either way, these artifacts remind us that history is far more mysterious than we imagine, and that the past might hold secrets that challenge our understanding of time itself. In the flickering shadows of old film reels, sometimes we catch glimpses of something that doesn't belong. These are the moments that make us pause, rewind, and stare in wonder at what appears to be evidence of time travelers captured on vintage celluloid. The most famous of these temporal mysteries emerged from the 1928 premiere of Charlie Chaplin's The Circus. In the background of the film, during a brief scene outside the theater, a figure walks past, wearing what appears to be a coat and hat typical of the era. Nothing unusual there, mirrors except for one startling detail. The person appears to be holding a small, rectangular object to their ear, speaking into it as if engaged in a telephone conversation. In 1928, this would have been impossible. Mobile phones wouldn't be invented for another 50 years. The footage is grainy and brief, but the gesture is unmistakable. The figure holds the object in exactly the way we hold cell phones today, tilting their head slightly, moving their lips as if speaking to someone. It's such a natural, familiar posture that modern viewers immediately recognize it. But in 1928, it would have been as impossible as someone flying without wings. Skeptics offer various explanations. Perhaps the person was holding a small radio, though portable radios of that era were much larger and required external antennas. Maybe it was a hearing aid, though the posture suggests active conversation rather than passive listening. Some suggest it might have been a compact mirror or small purse, but the body language clearly indicates communication rather than grooming or storage. The mystery deepens when we consider the film's context. This was the premiere of a major Hollywood production, attended by hundreds of people and extensively documented. If time travelers were going to visit the past, a glamorous movie premiere would be exactly the kind of historic event they might want to witness. The temporal tourist, perhaps, got careless with their modern technology. But the Chaplin film is not the only piece of vintage media that seems to contain temporal anomalies. A 1938 photograph from a bridge opening in British Columbia shows a man in the crowd wearing sunglasses, a printed t-shirt, and a modern-style sweater, clothing that wouldn't become popular for another decade. He looks remarkably out of place among the formally dressed crowd, like someone who stepped out of the 1940s into the 1930s. The photograph is particularly intriguing because the man's entire appearance screams of a later era. His casual clothing, relaxed posture, and modern sunglasses create a striking contrast with the formal attire of everyone around him. It's as if someone from the future tried to blend in but chose the wrong decade's fashion as their disguise. Even more mysterious are the modern-looking objects that appear in historical photographs. A 1940s photograph shows a woman at a beach holding what appears to be a modern camera nearly decades before such compact photography equipment existed. The device in her hands looks remarkably similar to digital cameras that wouldn't be invented until the 1990s. Old films sometimes contain other temporal mysteries. A 1928 film shows a woman walking past a storefront, apparently talking animatedly to empty air. Her gestures and facial expressions suggest she's engaged in conversation, but there's no one else present. Modern viewers immediately recognize the behavior. She appears to be using a wireless earpiece, technology that wouldn't exist for another 70 years. The phenomenon extends beyond individual artifacts to include entire crowds that seem temporally displaced. In some old photographs, individuals or small groups appear to be dressed in a style that's decades ahead of their time. Their clothing, hairstyles, and accessories seem to belong to a future era, as if they've stepped out of a time machine and tried to blend in with limited success. What makes these mysteries particularly compelling is their accidental nature. These aren't staged photographs or deliberately mysterious images. They're candid moments captured by photographers who had no idea they might be documenting something extraordinary. The temporal anomalies appear in backgrounds, crowd shots, and casual street photography, exactly where we might expect to find time travelers trying to observe historical events without drawing attention. The digital age has made these mysteries more accessible and more puzzling. Modern film restoration techniques can enhance old footage, revealing details that were previously invisible. What appeared to be normal crowd scenes in old films sometimes contain figures whose behavior or possessions seem impossibly advanced for their era. Some researchers suggest that these anomalies might be evidence of temporal tourists, people from our future who travel back to witness significant historical events. Like any tourists, they might occasionally make mistakes, carrying modern technology or wearing inappropriate clothing that reveals their true temporal origin. The beautiful irony is that these potential time travelers are captured by the very technology they're trying to avoid, cameras and film that preserve their temporal trespassing for future generations to discover. If time travelers are indeed visiting our past, they might be doing so unaware that their journeys are being documented, creating a permanent record of their temporal adventures. Whether these are genuine temporal anomalies or simply examples of misidentified objects and coincidental appearances, they remind us that the past is full of mysteries waiting to be discovered. Sometimes the evidence of time travel might be hiding in plain sight, preserved in the archives of our collective memory. Throughout history, certain individuals have displayed an uncanny ability to see beyond the veil of time, describing future events and technologies with such accuracy that we must wonder if they possessed knowledge from tomorrow. These prophetic figures speak of inventions decades before they're created, predict historical events with startling precision, and describe technologies that seem impossible for their era. Leonardo da Vinci stands as perhaps the most famous example of someone who seemed to possess knowledge from the future. His notebooks contain designs for helicopters, submarines, tanks, and flying machines, all concepts that wouldn't become reality for another 400 years. His drawings show a deep understanding of aerodynamics, hydraulics, and mechanical engineering that far exceeded the knowledge of his time. What makes Leonardo's prophetic abilities even more mysterious is the precision of his designs. His helicopter concept, the aerial screw, demonstrates a clear understanding of how lift is generated through rotating blades. His submarine designs include features like ballast tanks and air supply systems that mirror modern submarine technology. These aren't vague sketches, but detailed engineering drawings that could serve as blueprints for actual construction. Leonardo seemed to understand concepts that wouldn't be formally discovered for centuries. His studies of water flow revealed principles of fluid dynamics that wouldn't be mathematically described until the 19th century. His anatomical drawings show knowledge of human physiology that was far ahead of medical understanding in his time. It's as if he had access to textbooks from the future. Jules Verne presents another fascinating case of prophetic vision. His novels, written in the 19th century, described submarines, space travel, and deep-sea exploration with remarkable accuracy. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea featured technology that wouldn't exist for another 50 years. His descriptions of submarine operations, underwater life, and deep-sea environments proved to be startlingly accurate when submarines were finally developed. Verne's From the Earth to the Moon described space travel with such precision, however NASA scientists later admitted they used his calculations as reference points. His launch site in Florida was remarkably close to where the actual Apollo missions would depart. His descriptions of weightlessness, the view of Earth from space, and the challenges of lunar travel proved prophetic in their accuracy. Perhaps most intriguingly, Verne seemed to understand the social and political implications of future technology. His novels explored how submarines might change naval warfare, how space travel might unite humanity, and how advanced technology might affect society. These weren't just technical predictions, but comprehensive visions of how the future might unfold. Nikola Tesla represents another figure who seemed to possess knowledge from beyond his time. His understanding of electricity, wireless communication, and energy transmission was so advanced that many of his ideas are still being explored today. Tesla described wireless power transmission, global communication networks, and remote-controlled devices decades before they became reality. Tesla's notebooks contain concepts that seem drawn from the future. He described principles of radio transmission before radio was invented, envisioned wireless communication networks that resemble the internet, and proposed energy systems that mirror modern renewable technology. His understanding of alternating current, electromagnetic fields, and wireless transmission laid the foundation for the electrical age. What makes Tesla's prophetic abilities particularly mysterious is his claim to receive information through visions and dreams. He described seeing complete inventions in his mind, understanding their operation without needing to build prototypes. This suggests a form of knowledge acquisition that transcends normal learning minds, as if he was receiving transmissions from the future. H.G. Wells stands as another prophetic figure whose visions of the future proved remarkably accurate. His novels predicted atomic warfare, space travel, genetic engineering, and time travel itself. The Time Machine explored concepts of temporal travel that later became serious subjects of scientific study. His descriptions of atomic bombs, written decades before their development, included details about radiation and nuclear reactions that proved surprisingly accurate. Wells seemed to understand not just the technology of the future, but its social implications. His novels explored how scientific advancement might change society, how new technologies might be misused, and how humanity might evolve. These weren't just technical predictions, but comprehensive visions of humanity's future development. Some historical figures made predictions so specific and accurate that they seem impossible without access to future knowledge. Michel de Nostradame, known as Nostradamus, described events and technologies centuries before they occurred. While many of his predictions are vague and open to interpretation, others are remarkably specific and accurate. The mystery deepens when we consider that these prophetic figures often described their visions as dreams, inspiration, or divine revelation. They claimed to receive information through channels that transcended normal human knowledge. Whether this represents genuine temporal communication, exceptional intuition, or access to some form of universal knowledge, remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Could these prophetic visions be evidence of time travelers sharing information with key historical figures? Perhaps someone from our future has been quietly guiding human development, providing selected individuals with knowledge and inspiration that advances our species along predetermined paths. The prophets might be unwitting messengers, receiving transmissions from tomorrow and translating them into the language of their time. The beautiful mystery is that these prophetic figures seem to bridge different eras, connecting past and future through their remarkable visions. They remind us that time might be more fluid than we imagine, and that knowledge from tomorrow might occasionally leak into yesterday. In the bustling anonymity of modern cities, certain encounters leave witnesses with the unsettling feeling that they've met someone from another time. These are the vanishing strangers, mysterious individuals who appear with uncanny knowledge, offer cryptic warnings or remarkable insights, they then disappear without trace, leaving only questions and the lingering sensation that time itself has briefly opened its hidden doors. The pattern is remarkably consistent across different cultures and decades. A stranger approaches someone at a moment of crisis or important decision, demonstrates knowledge they shouldn't possess, offers guidance that proves remarkably accurate, then vanishes in a way that seems to defy normal explanation. They don't simply walk away, they seem to dissolve back into the flow of time from which they emerged. Take the case of the businessman in Tokyo, who in 1975 was approached by a well-dressed man at a train station. The stranger knew intimate details about the businessman's financial troubles, mentioned investments that hadn't yet been announced, and suggested specific actions that would save his company. The advice proved remarkably accurate, but when the businessman tried to find his mysterious benefactor, no one at the station remembered seeing such a person. Security cameras showed the businessman talking to empty air. Similar encounters happen worldwide. A woman in London receives detailed warnings about a terrorist attack from a stranger who describes the event with precision that seems impossible without foreknowledge. A farmer in Kansas is visited by someone who provides information about weather patterns and crop diseases that proves invaluable for the coming season. A scientist in Switzerland meets a colleague who discusses research that hasn't been published yet, offering insights that advance the work by months. What makes these encounters particularly intriguing is the temporal knowledge the strangers demonstrate. They don't just know personal details about their targets, they seem to understand future events, technological developments, and social changes that haven't yet occurred. They speak of stock market movements, political developments, and scientific breakthroughs with the casual confidence of someone reading yesterday's newspaper. The vanishing strangers often display an intimate knowledge of their targets' personal histories, mentioning childhood events, private conversations, and family secrets that no normal stranger could know. They seem to have access to complete biographical information, as if they've studied detailed records of their targets' lives. This suggests either extraordinary surveillance capabilities or access to information that only exists in the future. Their appearance often seems deliberately unremarkable. Witnesses describe them as perfectly ordinary mice, the kind of person you might pass on the street without a second glance. They dress appropriately for their time and place, speak without accent or unusual mannerisms, and generally blend into their surroundings. Only their knowledge sets them apart, marking them as something more than ordinary passers-by. The timing of these encounters is often significant. The strangers appear at moments of crisis, important decisions, or historical significance. They seem drawn to temporal, pivotal points, moments when small actions might have large consequences. This suggests they might be operating according to some form of temporal mission, intervening at specific moments to guide events in particular directions. Some witnesses report that the strangers seem to age differently than normal people. They appear unchanged when encountered years apart, or they seem to age backwards, appearing younger in subsequent meetings. This temporal displacement suggests they might not be experiencing time in the same linear fashion as the rest of us. The stranger's knowledge often extends to highly technical or specialized information. They discuss scientific concepts that are at the cutting edge of research, mention technological developments that won't be announced for years, and demonstrate understanding of complex systems that would require decades of study to master. This breadth of knowledge suggests either superhuman intelligence or access to information from the future. Their warnings often prove remarkably accurate. People who follow the stranger's advice find themselves avoiding accidents, making profitable investments, or navigating crises with unexpected success. The guidance seems to come from someone who has already seen how events unfold, offering shortcuts through the maze of uncertainty that defines normal human experience. The vanishing aspect of these encounters is perhaps the most mysterious element. All witnesses report that the strangers don't simply leave, they seem to fade, dissolve, or disappear in ways that defy normal explanation. Security cameras malfunction, witnesses become confused about what they saw, and attempts to track the strangers lead to dead ends. It's as if they possess some form of temporal camouflage, that erases their presence from the historical record. Modern technology has made these disappearances even more mysterious. In an age of surveillance cameras, cell phone tracking, and digital records, the complete absence of trace evidence becomes increasingly difficult to explain. The strangers seem to move through our hyper-documented world without leaving digital footprints, suggesting either advanced countermeasures or the ability to exist outside our normal temporal framework. Some witnesses report that the strangers seem to be working towards specific goals, as if they're part of a larger temporal mission. Their interventions often seem designed to prevent disasters, advance beneficial technologies, or guide humanity toward positive outcomes. Some Witnavataini set. This suggests they might be temporal agents, working to optimize historical outcomes according to some future understanding of consequences. The vanishing strangers represent one of the most compelling forms of potential time traveler evidence. They combine the personal touch of direct encounter with the mystery of temporal displacement, creating experiences that are both intimate and impossible. Whether they represent genuine visitors from the future or some other form of temporal phenomenon, they remind us that time might be more permeable than we imagine, and that help might sometimes come from the most unexpected temporal directions. In the grand timeline of human innovation, certain technological breakthroughs appear, like flowers blooming out of season too early, too advanced, too perfect to emerge naturally from the soil of their era. These are the technologies that seem to skip evolutionary steps, appearing fully formed, as if someone had fast-forwarded through decades of development and delivered the finished product to an unsuspecting world. Consider the sudden appearance of fiber optic technology in the 1960s. While the basic principle of light transmission through glass had been understood for decades, the leap to practical fiber optic communication happened with startling speed. Charles Cow's breakthrough work seemed to solve multiple complex problems simultaneously: signal loss, interference, and manufacturing challenges that had puzzled researchers for years. The technology appeared so suddenly and completely that it transformed global communications almost overnight. The development of fiber optics required advances in materials, science, precision manufacturing, and signal processing that seemed to emerge from nowhere. The pure glass required for long-distance transmission demanded manufacturing techniques that were supposedly beyond the capabilities of the era. Yet these challenges were solved with solutions that appeared almost magically, as if someone had provided the answers to questions that researchers were still learning to ask. The integrated circuit presents another example of technology appearing before its time. Jack Kilby's invention in 1958 seemed to solve the complexity problems of electronic miniaturization in one elegant leap. The concept of placing multiple electronic components on a single chip required manufacturing precision, materials, knowledge, and design principles that seemed impossibly advanced for the era. Yet the technology emerged fully formed, ready to launch the digital revolution. What makes the integrated circuit's appearance particularly mysterious is how quickly it moved from concept to mass production. Normal technological development involves decades of gradual improvement, but integrated circuits seem to bypass this evolutionary process. The manufacturing techniques required were so advanced that they seem to represent knowledge from a much later period in technological development. The laser provides another case of technology appearing with suspicious timing. Theodore Maimon's Ruby laser in 1960 represented a solution to problems that scientists were still struggling to understand. The precise understanding of light amplification, optical resonance, and quantum mechanics required for laser operation seemed to emerge from nowhere. The technology appeared complete and ready for applications that wouldn't be fully understood for another decade. The development of the Internet presents perhaps the most intriguing case of accelerated technological development. The ARPANET project in the 1960s required solutions to networking problems that seemed impossibly complex for the era. The concept of packet switching, distributed networks, and digital communication protocols emerged with remarkable speed and sophistication. The technology appeared to anticipate problems and solutions that wouldn't become obvious for another generation. What makes the Internet's development particularly mysterious is how perfectly it seemed designed for future applications. The protocols and structures created in the 1960s proved ideal for the World Wide Web, email, and social media (Maditos) applications that wouldn't be invented for another 30 years. If you always be so fruit, it's as if the network was designed with foreknowledge of how it would eventually be used. The Global Positioning System represents another technology that seemed to emerge fully formed. This satellite navigation system required precise understanding of relativity, atomic clocks, and orbital mechanics that seemed remarkably advanced for the 1970s. The system's accuracy and reliability appeared to bypass the normal learning curve of technological development, emerging as a mature technology from the beginning. Medical technologies have also shown signs of premature advancement. The development of MRI technology in the 1970s required understanding of magnetic fields, radio waves, and computer processing that seemed impossibly sophisticated for the era. The technology appeared to solve multiple complex problems simultaneously, creating medical imaging capabilities that seemed to belong to a more advanced future. The rapid advancement of computer processing power also suggests knowledge from beyond its time. Moore's law, which predicted the doubling of computer processing power every 2 years, seemed less like a prediction and more like a roadmap. The consistent achievement of these improvements required technological breakthroughs that appeared with remarkable regularity, as if someone knew exactly what milestones needed to be reached and when. Genetic engineering technology appeared with similar suspicious timing. The development of recombinant DNA techniques in the 1970s required understanding of molecular biology, enzyme systems, and cellular processes that seemed remarkably advanced for the era. The technology emerged almost complete, ready for applications that researchers were still learning to imagine. The development of nuclear technology also showed signs of accelerated advancement. The Manhattan Project achieved nuclear fission with remarkable speed, solving theoretical and practical problems that had puzzled scientists for decades. The sudden understanding of nuclear physics and engineering required seemed to represent knowledge that was far ahead of its time. What makes these technological leaps particularly intriguing is their timing. They often appear at moments of crisis or opportunity, when humanity needs specific capabilities to address emerging challenges. The technologies seem perfectly suited to the problems they solve, as if they were designed by someone who understood both the challenges and the solutions. The pattern suggests that someone somewhere might be providing technological guidance to human development. Whether this represents time travelers sharing future knowledge, advanced artificial intelligence, or some other form of temporal intervention, the consistent appearance of technologies before their time suggests that human innovation might not be as independent as we imagine. These premature technologies remind us that the path of human development might not be as random or evolutionary as we assume. Perhaps someone from our future is quietly guiding our technological advancement, ensuring that we develop the capabilities we need exactly when we need them most. In our hyper-connected world, where every click is tracked and every moment is documented, strange digital anomalies emerge that make us question the nature of time itself. These are the glitches in the matrix, the temporal hiccups that suggest someone might be navigating through our digital networks from a different point in time, leaving electronic footprints that shouldn't exist. Consider the phenomenon of future-dated digital communications. Emails appear in inboxes with timestamps from tomorrow, next week, or even next year. Not simple time zone errors, but messages that seem to arrive from genuine temporal displacement. The content often contains information that proves accurate, references to events that haven't occurred yet, or knowledge that shouldn't exist at the time of transmission. Social media platforms have become unexpected temporal laboratories. Users report seeing posts from friends and family members that reference events, conversations, or experiences that haven't happened yet. These posts often disappear when questioned, leaving only screenshots as evidence. The algorithms that govern our digital feeds seem occasionally confused by content that arrives from the wrong temporal direction. Database anomalies present another fascinating category of digital temporal mysteries. Government records appear with future dates. Birth certificates show dates that haven't occurred, and historical documents seem to update themselves with information about events that haven't happened yet. These aren't simple data entry errors, but systematic anomalies that suggest someone is accessing our databases from a different temporal perspective. The stock market, with its real-time data feeds and microsecond timing, has become a source of temporal anomalies. Trading algorithms occasionally receive data packets that seem to arrive from the future, containing price information for stocks that haven't moved yet. These microsecond glimpses of tomorrow's market movements suggest that someone might be trading across time itself. Search engines sometimes display results for queries that haven't been performed yet. Google's autocomplete function occasionally suggests searches for events that haven't occurred, news stories that haven't been written, or technologies that haven't been announced. These predictive errors seem to suggest that the search algorithms are receiving information from future user behavior. Digital photographs present their own temporal mysteries. Images uploaded to social media platforms sometimes contain metadata that shows impossible dates, of photos taken years in the future, or images with GPS coordinates that show locations that don't exist yet. Camera phones occasionally capture images that seem to show the same scene at different times, as if the camera is receiving visual information from multiple temporal perspectives. Cryptocurrency transactions, with their permanent blockchain records, have revealed temporal anomalies that challenge our understanding of digital time. Transactions appear with future timestamps. Blocks are mined with dates that haven't occurred, and wallet addresses seem to receive payments from tomorrow. The immutable nature of blockchain makes these anomalies particularly puzzling. GPS systems occasionally provide navigation instructions for routes that don't exist yet, directing drivers to turn on roads that are still under construction, or to visit buildings that haven't been built. These temporal mapping errors suggest that someone is updating our navigation systems with information from the future, possibly time travelers who need accurate directions in whatever era they're visiting. Video conferencing platforms have become sources of temporal anomalies during the digital age. Participants sometimes report seeing other attendees who claim to be calling from different time periods or receiving meeting invitations for events that haven't been scheduled yet. The real-time nature of video communication seems to create opportunities for temporal displacement. Online gaming presents particularly rich sources of temporal anomalies. Players report encountering other users who demonstrate knowledge of game updates that haven't been released, discuss events that haven't occurred in the game world, or possess items that don't exist yet. These temporal gaming encounters suggest that someone might be playing across multiple timelines simultaneously. Cloud storage systems occasionally exhibit temporal behavior that defies explanation. Files appear with future modification dates. Backup systems restore data that was never originally stored, and version control systems show changes that haven't been made yet. The distributed nature of cloud computing seems to create opportunities for temporal data displacement. Artificial intelligence systems sometimes display knowledge that seems to come from the future. Machine learning algorithms occasionally reference training data they haven't received yet, predict events with uncanny accuracy, or demonstrate understanding of concepts that haven't been programmed. Whether these AI temporal anomalies suggest that machine intelligence might be more susceptible to temporal displacement than human consciousness. The Internet of Things has created billions of connected devices that occasionally report status updates from the future. Smart home systems turn on lights before residents arrive. Fitness trackers record exercise sessions that haven't occurred, and weather sensors report atmospheric conditions for dates that haven't happened. These temporal IoT glitches suggest that our connected world might be receiving data from multiple time periods simultaneously. Social media archiving systems sometimes preserve posts, photos, and conversations that seem to document events from the future. These digital time capsules contain information that proves accurate, references to technologies that haven't been invented, and discussions of social changes that haven't occurred. The permanent nature of digital archives makes these temporal artifacts particularly valuable evidence. The digital age has transformed our relationship with time, creating new opportunities for temporal anomalies and new forms of evidence for time travel. Our hyper-connected world might be inadvertently creating a digital net that catches temporal travelers preserving evidence of their journeys in the permanent records of our electronic civilization. Whether these digital anomalies represent genuine temporal displacement, sophisticated hoaxes, or simply the chaotic nature of complex systems, they remind us that time in the digital age is more fluid and mysterious than we might imagine. Our electronic networks might be the first technology capable of detecting and documenting visitors from other times. Imagine you build a time machine and decide to travel back to 1955. You arrive in your grandfather's hometown, and through a series of unfortunate events, you accidentally prevent your grandparents from meeting. They never fall in love, never marry, and never have children. Your parent is never born, which means you are never born, which means you never build the time machine, which means you never travel back in time to prevent your grandparents from meeting. This is the grandfather paradox, logical loop that seems to tear a hole in the fabric of causality itself. The grandfather paradox represents the most famous challenge to time travel, a riddle that has puzzled philosophers and physicists for decades. It's not really about grandfathers, of course. It's about the fundamental question of whether the past can be changed, and what happens to causality when effect precedes cause. The paradox reveals the deep tensions between our intuitive understanding of time and the strange possibilities that emerge when we try to navigate it. At its heart, the grandfather paradox is about consistency. If you prevent your own birth, you create a logical contradiction that seems to have no resolution. You exist because you don't exist. You act because you can't act. You travel because you never travel. The paradox creates a causal loop that seems to violate the basic logic of existence itself. But perhaps the paradox reveals something profound about the nature of time and causality. If time travel is possible, then maybe the universe has built-in mechanisms to prevent paradoxes from occurring. Maybe the cosmos is far more cleverly designed than we imagine, with safeguards that preserve causality even when time travelers try to disrupt it. One possibility is that the universe prevents paradoxes through what physicists call the Novikov self-consistency principle. This suggests that the laws of physics somehow conspire to prevent paradox-creating events from occurring. If you travel back in time to prevent your grandparents from meeting, something will always go wrong with your plan. You'll miss the crucial moment, your actions will backfire, or events will unfold in ways that ensure your grandparents meet despite your interference. This isn't about luck or coincidence. It's about the fundamental structure of space-time itself. The universe might be designed so that only self-consistent timelines can exist. Events that would create paradoxes simply can't happen, not because they're prevented by some cosmic police force, but because they're logically impossible within the structure of reality. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics offers another elegant solution to the grandfather paradox. In this view, every quantum event creates multiple parallel universes, each corresponding to a different possible outcome. When you travel back in time and prevent your grandparents from meeting, you don't change your original timeline. You create a new one where you were never born. This means that time travel doesn't change the past, Anatus. It creates new versions of the past. You arrive in 1955 from timeline A, where your grandparents met and fell in love. Your actions create timeline B, where they never meet. You continue to exist because you originated in timeline A, but you've now stranded yourself in timeline B, where you have no history. You become a temporal refugee, existing in a world where you were never born. The many worlds solution is beautiful because it allows time travel without paradoxes. Every possible action creates a new timeline, and all timelines exist simultaneously. Time travelers don't change history. They explore the infinite garden of possibility, moving between different versions of reality, like tourists visiting different countries. But perhaps the most intriguing resolution to the grandfather paradox is the bootstrap paradox, which suggests that some events might be self-creating. Imagine you travel back in time and accidentally save someone's life. Later, you discover that this person was your grandfather, and that without your intervention, he would have died before your parent was born. Your time travel didn't change the past, it was always part of the past. You saved your grandfather because you had to save him, creating a causal loop where effect and cause become indistinguishable. Bootstrap paradoxes suggest that time might be more flexible than we imagine. Some events might exist without clear origins, supported by causal loops that create their own necessity. Your intervention in the past becomes inevitable because it already happened, creating a temporal architecture where past and future support each other like the stones of an arch. The grandfather paradox also raises questions about identity and consciousness. If you prevent your own birth, do you cease to exist instantly? Do you fade away like a photograph in Back to the Future? Or do you continue to exist as a temporal anomaly, a person without a past? The paradox forces us to confront fundamental questions about what it means to exist and whether consciousness can persist without causal history. Perhaps the most profound insight from the grandfather paradox is that time travel might not be about changing the past, but about understanding it. If the universe prevents paradoxes, then time travelers might be explorers rather than editors, witnesses rather than authors. They might discover that the past is more fixed than we imagine, protected by the fundamental laws of physics from temporal vandalism. The grandfather paradox reminds us that time is not simply a dimension we move through, but a complex system with its own logic and constraints. If time travel is possible, it must operate according to rules that preserve causality and consistency. The universe might be far more cleverly designed than we assume, with built-in safeguards that allow temporal exploration while preventing temporal chaos. In the quantum realm, where particles exist in multiple states simultaneously and observation creates reality, physicist Hugh Everett III proposed something extraordinary, that every possible outcome of every quantum event actually occurs, creating countless parallel universes that branch off from each moment like leaves on an infinite tree. This many worlds interpretation doesn't just solve the grandfather paradox, it transforms time travel from a logical impossibility into a journey through the vast landscape of possibility. Picture reality as a cosmic river that splits into countless streams at every moment. When you flip a coin, the river divides in one stream, it lands heads. In another, it lands tails. Both outcomes are equally real, equally valid, equally true. You experience only one stream, but the others flow alongside yours, carrying versions of yourself who experience different outcomes. This is the many worlds universe, where every possibility finds expression somewhere in the infinite expanse of existence. In this framework, time travel becomes a journey between these parallel streams. When you travel back in time and prevent your grandparents from meeting, you don't erase yourself from existence. You simply move from one timeline to another. You originated in timeline A, where your grandparents fell in love and your family tree grew as expected. Your time travel adventure deposits you in timeline B, where your interference created a different history. You continue to exist because you came from a different branch of reality. This solution is elegant because it preserves both free will and causality. You can take any action you want in the past without creating logical contradictions. Every choice you make simply selects which timeline you experience. Want to save Lincoln from assassination? Want to save Lincoln from assassination? You'll create a timeline where he lives. Want to prevent the Titanic from sinking? You'll experience a reality where it safely reaches New York. The original timelines still exist. You've just moved to a different branch of the cosmic tree. You've experienced Forpuri. You'll create a timeline where he lives. Want to prevent the Titanic from sinking? The many worlds interpretation suggests that time travel might be less about changing the past and more about exploring the infinite catalogue of possible histories. Every what-if question that has ever been asked corresponds to a timeline where that possibility became reality. What if the dinosaurs never went extinct? What if Rome never fell? What if the Library of Alexandria was never destroyed? These aren't just hypothetical questions, they're addresses in the vast postal system of parallel realities. But this abundance of possibilities raises profound questions about identity and meaning. If every possible version of you exists across the multiverse, which one is really you? Are you the version who became a doctor, or the one who became an artist? Are you the one who married your high school sweetheart, or the one who moved to Paris alone. The many worlds interpretation suggests that all these versions are equally valid, equally real, equally you. This multiplicity of selves has strange implications for time travel. When you journey to the past, you might encounter other versions of yourself who made different choices, came from different timelines, or have different histories entirely. The past becomes a crowded place, populated by time travelers from countless different futures, each carrying their own history and their own agenda. The many worlds framework also suggests that time travel might be happening constantly, all around us, in ways we don't recognize. Every quantum event creates new timelines, and perhaps some of these quantum fluctuations allow information or even consciousness to leak between parallel realities. What we interpret as intuition, déjà vu, or prophetic dreams might be glimpses of neighboring timelines, brief communications from versions of ourselves who experience different outcomes. The implications extend beyond individual time travel to encompass entire civilizations. If advanced beings develop time travel technology, they might send explorers throughout the multiverse, creating a vast network of temporal anthropologists studying every possible variation of history. Our timeline might host visitors from realities where evolution took different paths, where physics works differently. This raises the beautiful possibility that time travelers might not be human at all. In timelines where intelligence emerged in different species, where artificial consciousness developed first, or where quantum computers achieved sentience, the time travelers visiting our reality might be representatives of entirely different forms of life. They might be exploring the multiverse to understand the vast range of possibilities for consciousness and civilization. The many worlds interpretation also suggests that time travel might be a form of cosmic recycling. Information, energy, and even consciousness might flow between timelines, creating a vast exchange system where resources are shared across the multiverse. Time travelers might be agents of this cosmic economy, moving knowledge, technology, and awareness between realities to optimize the development of consciousness across all timelines. Perhaps most intriguingly, the many worlds framework suggests that time travel might be inevitable. In an infinite multiverse, every possible technology will eventually be developed somewhere. Time travel becomes not a question of if, but when and where. In countless timelines, or beings achieve temporal mastery and begin exploring the vast web of parallel realities. Our universe might be part of a cosmic community that spans all possible timelines. The many worlds interpretation transforms time travel from a lonely journey into a cosmic adventure. Instead of isolated individuals changing history, we might be part of a vast multiverse society where consciousness explores every possible variation of existence. Time travel becomes not just a way to visit the past, but a method of exploring the infinite creativity of reality itself. In this framework, every choice matters, because every choice creates a new world. Every timeline is precious, because it represents a unique experiment in the laboratory of existence. Time travelers become explorers of possibility, ambassadors between realities, and witnesses to the infinite creative potential of consciousness itself. In The Elegant Mathematics of Theoretical Physics, Russian physicist Igor Novikov proposed something remarkably beautiful, that the universe might be designed to protect itself from temporal contradictions. His self-consistency principle suggests that the laws of physics themselves conspire to prevent paradoxes, creating a cosmos where time travel is possible, but temporal chaos is impossible. It's as if the universe has its own immune system, protecting the integrity of causality while allowing the wonder of temporal exploration. The Novikov principle operates on a profound assumption that only self-consistent timelines can exist. This means that events which would create paradoxes are not prevented by some cosmic police force, but are simply impossible within the structure of reality itself. The universe doesn't need to actively prevent paradoxes miss. It's designed so that only non-paradoxical events can occur. It's like a cosmic jigsaw puzzle, where pieces that don't fit simply cannot be placed. Imagine you travel back in time with the intention of preventing your own birth. According to the Novikov principle, your mission is doomed to fail not because of bad luck or poor planning, but because the universe itself is structured to prevent such paradoxes. Every attempt you make will backfire in ways that seem almost magical. You'll miss crucial moments. Your actions will have unexpected consequences, or events will unfold in ways that ensure your original timeline remains intact. This isn't about fate or destiny in the traditional sense. It's about the fundamental architecture of space-time. The universe might be designed so that the past is not just difficult to change, but logically impossible to alter in paradox-creating ways. You can visit the past, observe it, even participate in it, but you cannot fundamentally alter the causal structure that created your present. The beauty of the Novikov principle lies in its elegant simplicity. It doesn't require complex mechanisms or mysterious forces. It simply states that the universe is logically consistent. If time travel is possible, then the universe must be designed to accommodate it without creating contradictions. The laws of physics become a kind of cosmic programming language that prevents bugs in the code of causality. This principle has fascinating implications for how time travel might actually work. If you travel to the past, you don't become a foreign agent of change. You become part of the historical events you're trying to influence. Your presence in the past was always part of the past. Your actions were always part of the causal chain that created your present. You're not changing history. You're fulfilling it. Consider the bootstrap paradox within the Novikov framework. You travel back in time and give Shakespeare a copy of Hamlet, which he then publishes as his own work. But where did Hamlet originally come from? In the Novikov universe, this isn't a problem. The play exists in a self-consistent causal loop where its creation is supported by its own existence. The universe accommodates such loops because they don't create logical contradictions. The Novikov principle suggests that time travelers might be more like temporal actors than temporal directors. They play roles in the cosmic drama, but the script is already written in ways that maintain consistency. A time traveler might save someone's life, but only because that person was always meant to be saved. They might prevent a disaster, but only because that disaster was never meant to happen in the first place. This has profound implications for free will and determinism. If the Novikov principle is correct, then time travelers have the freedom to make choices, but only choices that maintain consistency with the established timeline. It's like being free to improvise within a jazz composition. You can be creative and spontaneous, but only within the framework that maintains the overall musical structure. The principle also suggests that the universe might be far more interconnected than we imagine. If past, present, and future must maintain consistency, then events across time are linked in ways that create a four-dimensional tapestry of causality. What happens in the past influences the future, but what happens in the future also influences the past, creating a temporal ecology where all events exist in delicate balance. From this perspective, time travel becomes a form of temporal archaeology. Travelers to the past might discover that their journey was always part of history, that their presence was always accounted for in the causal structure of events. They might find evidence of their own future visits in historical records, creating a strange loop where preparation for a journey becomes part of the journey itself. The Novikov principle also raises intriguing questions about the nature of information and knowledge. If you travel to the past with knowledge of future events, that knowledge becomes part of the past. But this creates the possibility of information loops, where knowledge exists without origin. The universe might be designed to accommodate such loops, allowing information to flow through time in ways that maintain consistency while creating seemingly impossible causal structures. Perhaps most beautifully, the Novikov principle suggests that time travel might be a form of cosmic artistry. The universe becomes a four-dimensional sculpture where past, present, and future are carved into a single, consistent masterpiece. Time travelers become both artists and art, creators and creations, participants in a temporal ballet where every step is both spontaneous and inevitable. The principle implies that if time travel is possible, it must be possible in ways that preserve the beauty and consistency of the cosmos. The universe protects itself not through force or prevention, but through the elegant logic of self-consistency. time becomes not a fragile linear sequence, but a robust multidimensional structure that can accommodate temporal exploration while maintaining its essential integrity. In the Novikov universe, time travel becomes safe, not because it's controlled, but because it's consistent. The cosmos itself becomes the ultimate time travel safety mechanism, ensuring that temporal journeys enhance rather than destroy the magnificent complexity of existence. Imagine arriving in a foreign country where you don't speak the language, don't understand the customs, and every social interaction reveals how utterly out of place you are. Now imagine that this foreign country is your own homeland, but decades or centuries in the past, and you cannot reveal your true origin without sounding insane. This is the temporal refugee's dilemma, the psychological and practical challenges that would face any time traveler trying to integrate into a society from another era. The most immediate challenge would be linguistic. Language evolves constantly, and what sounds normal in one era can seem strange or even incomprehensible in another. A time traveler from 2024, speaking to people in 1950, would unconsciously use words, phrases, and cultural references that haven't been invented yet. They might ask for Wi-Fi passwords, mention social media, or use slang that won't exist for decades. If you lose, we'll lose Quain that won't exist for decades. Every conversation would be a minefield of potential temporal exposure. But the challenges go deeper than vocabulary. The entire rhythm and pattern of speech changes over time. Sentence structures, pronunciation, and even the cadence of conversation evolve across generations. A time traveler might speak with grammatical constructions that sound archaic to their hosts, or use intonation patterns that mark them as foreign to their own homeland. They would be linguistic strangers in their own language. The psychological pressure of constant vigilance would be enormous. Every interaction requires careful filtering of responses, constant monitoring of cultural references, and the exhausting work of pretending to be surprised by events you know are coming. The temporal refugee must become a master actor, performing the role of a person from an era they've only read about or seen in movies. Cultural adaptation presents another layer of complexity. Each era has its own unspoken rules, social hierarchies, and behavioral expectations. A time traveler from the modern era might struggle with the formal social structures of the past, of the different roles expected of men and women, or the various forms of discrimination that were considered normal in earlier times. They would need to navigate these cultural minefields while suppressing their natural reactions to social injustices. The temporal refugee would also face the challenge of anachronistic knowledge. They would know about future technologies, historical events, and social changes that haven't occurred yet. This knowledge would be both a blessing and a curse. It might help them avoid dangers or make profitable investments, but it would also create the constant temptation to reveal information that could expose their temporal origin. Even more challenging would be the emotional burden of historical foreknowledge. Imagine knowing that a war is coming, that a natural disaster will strike, or that someone you've grown to care about will die young. The temporal refugee would carry the weight of future tragedies while being unable to prevent them without risking exposure. They would be haunted by the knowledge of preventable suffering that they cannot prevent. The lack of documentation would create practical challenges that modern people rarely consider. Time travelers would have no birth certificates, no school records, no work history, no family connections that could be verified. They would be undocumented immigrants in their own past, forced to create false identities and forge connections in a world that hasn't yet developed the bureaucratic infrastructure that makes such deception difficult. Social isolation would be perhaps the most difficult aspect of temporal displacement. The temporal refugee would be surrounded by people who share their appearance and language, but not their experiences, values, or cultural references. They would be alone with their memories of a future that hasn't happened yet, unable to share their true thoughts or feelings with anyone. The loneliness would be absolute and existential. The psychological adaptation would require remarkable mental flexibility. The temporal refugee would need to adopt different moral frameworks, social expectations, and worldviews while maintaining their core identity. They would become psychological chameleons, adapting their behavior to match their temporal environment while preserving their essential selves in private. To medical challenges would add another layer of complexity. Time travelers would carry modern immunity to diseases that might be common in the past, but they would also lack historical immunity to diseases that have been eradicated in their own time. They might need medical care based on outdated knowledge, or they might display symptoms that wouldn't be understood by the medical practitioners of their host era. The temporal refugee would also face the challenge of technological adaptation. Someone from the digital age would need to learn to function in a world without computers, smartphones, or internet access. They would need to relearn basic skills like map reading, letter writing, and face-to-face communication. The absence of modern conveniences would require psychological as well as practical adaptation. Perhaps most poignantly, the temporal refugee would live with the knowledge that they can never truly go home. Even if they could return to their own time, they would be forever changed by their experience. They would carry memories of people and places that exist only in history books, relationships that ended with their temporal departure, and the bittersweet knowledge of how the story of their host era unfolds. The temporal refugee's dilemma reveals the profound challenges that would face any time traveler trying to live in the past. They would be perpetual outsiders, forever performing the role of belonging, while never truly being able to integrate. Their existence would be a constant balance between adaptation and authenticity, between survival and identity, between the desire to help and the need to hide. If time travelers walk among us, they might be recognizable not by their advanced technology or mysterious knowledge, but by their subtle disconnection from the present moment. The psychological signatures of people who are living in the wrong time. The art of temporal camouflage would be one of the most crucial skills for any time traveler attempting to blend into a historical period. Like anthropologists studying ancient cultures, temporal visitors would need to master not just the obvious markers of their chosen era minus clothing, language, and customs, but also the subtle unconscious behaviors that truly define a time period. They would become method actors on the stage of history, performing the role of people from another time. The challenge begins with the most basic aspects of physical presentation. Hairstyles, makeup, and personal grooming evolve constantly, and what seems timeless in one era appears obviously dated in another. A time traveler would need to study historical photographs, paintings, and descriptions to understand not just what people wore, but how they wore it. The way someone ties their shoes, adjusts their collar, or carries their belongings are all temporal signatures that could expose an anachronistic visitor. But physical appearance is only the beginning. Body language and posture carry deep cultural programming that varies dramatically across time periods. The way people sit, stand, walk, and gesture reflects the social structures, physical demands, and cultural values of their era. A time traveler from the casual, informal 21st century would need to learn the more formal, structured movements of earlier periods, the way Victorian ladies navigated their restrictive clothing, or how medieval peasants moved with the physical efficiency demanded by their harsh lives. The temporal camouflage artist would need to master the subtle rhythms of daily life that define each era, the pace of movement, the patterns of social interaction, and the basic assumptions about time and scheduling all evolved throughout history. Someone accustomed to the hurried, clock-dominated pace of modern life would need to slow down and adopt the more seasonal, task-oriented rhythms of agricultural societies. Social interactions present perhaps the most complex challenge. Each era has its own unspoken rules about eye contact, physical proximity, and appropriate topics of conversation. The temporal visitor would need to learn not just what people talked about, but how they talked about it. Mix the social hierarchies, the forms of address, the cultural taboos that shaped every interaction. They would need to become fluent in the non-verbal communication of their chosen time period. Would it CEE session? Would it CEE plus? The most skilled temporal camouflage artists might actually be those who appear slightly out of place in ways that create plausible explanations for their oddities. They might pose as foreign visitors, recent immigrants, or people from distant regions where customs are different. This would provide cover for their unfamiliarity with local customs, while giving them a believable reason for their subtle anachronisms. Professional identity would be crucial for long-term camouflage. The temporal visitor would need to choose occupations that match their skills, while providing reasonable explanations for their knowledge and behavior. They might become traveling merchants, allowing them to explain their familiarity with distant places and customs. They might pose as scholars or scribes, providing cover for their literacy and broad knowledge. They might become entertainers or storytellers, giving them permission to share fictional stories that are actually memories from their own time. The psychological aspects of temporal camouflage would be as important as the physical ones. The time traveler would need to adopt the worldview, fears, and assumptions of their host era. They would need to suppress their modern skepticism about superstition, their casual attitude toward authority, and their unconscious assumptions about human rights and social equality. They would need to become psychological time travelers, thinking in ways that match their temporal environment. Technology presents both opportunities and challenges for temporal camouflage. While time travelers would need to avoid obviously anachronistic devices, they might be able to use their advanced knowledge to create period-appropriate versions of useful technologies. They might invent simple improvements to existing tools, discover medical treatments that are actually based on future knowledge, or develop agricultural techniques that increase productivity in ways that seem like natural innovations. The most sophisticated temporal camouflage might involve creating entire false histories. Advanced time travelers might plant evidence of their existence in historical records, create documentation that supports their cover identity, and even influence events to make their presence seem natural and inevitable. They might become their own historians, writing themselves into the past in ways that appear seamless to future researchers. Language would require constant attention and practice. The temporal visitor would need to avoid not just obvious anachronisms like modern slang, but also subtle differences in pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary that evolve over time. They would need to learn the speech patterns of their chosen social class, region, and profession, and maintain these patterns consistently even under stress or emotional pressure. The most challenging aspect of temporal camouflage might be the emotional work of genuinely connecting with people from another time while maintaining their deception. The time traveler would need to form authentic relationships with historical figures while constantly hiding their true identity. They would need to feel genuine emotions and form real bonds while living a fundamental lie about their origins. Perhaps the most successful temporal camouflage would be achieved by those who don't just pretend to belong to their chosen era, but who actually become people of that time. They would allow themselves to be psychologically transformed by their experience, adopting not just the behaviors, but the actual mindset of their temporal environment. They would become living bridges between eras, carrying the consciousness of the future into the past, while becoming authentic members of their chosen time period. If time travelers walk among us, they might be the most perfectly adapted individuals in society, people who seem to belong completely to their time, while carrying subtle traces of temporal displacement that only the most careful observers might notice. Part 5. C. The immortality question. 750 words. Throughout history, certain individuals have appeared to possess an uncanny resistance to the passage of time, living far beyond normal human lifespans, while maintaining their vitality and mental acuity. These seemingly ageless figures raise profound questions about the nature of human longevity and the possibility that some among us might be temporal visitors from different eras, existing outside the normal flow of biological time. The historical record is filled with accounts of individuals who lived impossibly long lives while maintaining their youthful appearance and mental clarity. These aren't simply cases of exceptional longevity, but patterns of aging that seem to defy the basic biology of human senescence. They appear in historical documents across different cultures and time periods, suggesting either remarkable genetic anomalies or something more mysterious about their temporal nature. Consider the Chinese sage Li Qingyuan, who claimed to have lived for over 256 years, dying in 1933. Government records seem to support his extraordinary age, and witnesses reported that he maintained his physical vitality and mental sharpness throughout his extended lifespan. His longevity was so extreme that it challenges our understanding of human biological limits. Was he simply a genetic anomaly, or might he have been a temporal visitor who experienced aging differently than ordinary humans? The phenomenon of seemingly immortal individuals appears across cultures and historical periods. In Europe, the Count of Saint-Germain appeared in high society during the 18th century, claiming to be centuries old while maintaining the appearance of a middle-aged man. Witnesses reported that he never seemed to age, possessed knowledge of historical events that spanned centuries, and displayed familiarity with multiple languages and cultures that suggested far more life experience than his apparent age could accommodate. Nicolas Flamel, the famous alchemist, was reportedly born in 1330 and died in 1418, but sightings of him continued for centuries afterward. People claimed to encounter him in different locations, apparently unchanged by the passage of time. His supposed immortality was attributed to his alchemical achievements, but the consistent reports of his continued existence raise questions about whether he might have been a time traveler who understood biological aging differently than his contemporaries. Modern science has revealed the biological mechanisms of aging: mischievous cellular damage, telomere shortening, and oxidative stress that accumulate over time. But what if some individuals possess knowledge or technology that allows them to circumvent these natural processes? Time travelers from the future might have access to life extension technologies that would appear magical to earlier eras, allowing them to maintain their youthful appearance across centuries. The psychological challenges of extreme longevity would be enormous. Imagine living for centuries, watching civilizations rise and fall, seeing everyone you care about age and die while you remain unchanged. The emotional burden would be extraordinary, requiring psychological resilience that few normal humans could maintain. Yet some historical figures seem to have navigated these challenges with remarkable equanimity, suggesting either exceptional mental fortitude or experience with the psychological demands of extended life. The question of identity becomes complex when considering immortal individuals. If someone lives for centuries, do they remain the same person throughout their extended lifespan? Their memories, experiences, and relationships would accumulate across decades or centuries, creating a depth of personal history that normal humans cannot achieve. They might become living libraries of human experience, carrying within themselves the memories of multiple lifetimes. Hompri Siliering Emorni of all, within Evi Nawad Fisirinava. Time travelers with extended lifespans might face unique challenges in maintaining their temporal camouflage. They would need to periodically disappear and reappear in different locations with new identities, creating the illusion of normal human mortality while actually continuing their existence. They might become masters of reinvention, cycling through different personas and identities while maintaining their core consciousness across centuries. The biological implications are fascinating to consider. If time travelers can extend their lives significantly, they might possess knowledge of cellular repair mechanisms, genetic modifications, or medical technologies that prevent or reverse aging. They might understand how to maintain their bodies at peak performance while allowing their minds to accumulate the wisdom and experience of extended existence. Some seemingly immortal individuals throughout history have been associated with significant historical events, appearing at crucial moments to provide guidance, influence decisions, or shape the course of human development. This pattern suggests they might be temporal agents, using their extended lifespans to guide human civilization according to some larger plan or purpose. The social implications of immortality would be profound. Immortal individuals would need to navigate the challenge of forming relationships with mortal humans, knowing that all connections would be temporary from their perspective. They might develop different approaches to emotional attachment, perhaps becoming more detached observers of human drama rather than full participants in mortal life. The accumulation of knowledge over centuries would give immortal individuals tremendous advantages. They would have direct experience of historical events, personal relationships with historical figures, and the ability to observe long-term patterns in human behavior and social development. This knowledge would make them incredibly valuable as advisors, historians, or guides for human civilization. Perhaps the most intriguing possibility is that some immortal individuals might be temporal refugees, people who became stranded in the past and learned to survive across centuries by extending their natural lifespans. They might carry memories of the future while being unable to return to their own time, becoming living bridges between different eras of human experience. The immortality question forces us to reconsider our assumptions about human lifespan and the nature of identity across time. If some individuals can transcend normal biological limits, they might represent a different category of human existence, people who experience time and mortality in ways that most of us cannot imagine. Whether they are time travelers, genetic anomalies, or something else entirely, their existence challenges our understanding of what it means to be human in the flow of time. In the shadowy corners of conspiracy theory and whispered government secrets, few stories are as haunting as the alleged Montauk Project. This supposed series of experiments, conducted at the abandoned Montauk Air Force Station on Long Island, represents one of the most detailed and persistent claims of government involvement in time travel research. Whether truth or elaborate fiction, the Montauk legend reveals our deepest fears and fascinations about temporal power in the hands of secretive authorities. The story begins in the 1940s with the Philadelphia Experiment, another legendary government project, allegedly designed to render naval vessels invisible to enemy radar. According to the accounts, the experiment succeeded too well, not only making the U.S. Eldridge invisible, but actually causing it to teleport through space and time. The ship allegedly disappeared from Philadelphia Naval Yard and reappeared in Norfolk, Virginia, with crew members fused into the ship's hull and others driven insane by their temporal displacement. The Montauk Project supposedly emerged from the lessons learned during the Philadelphia Experiment. Government scientists, having accidentally stumbled upon time travel technology, allegedly established a secret research facility to explore and weaponize temporal manipulation. The abandoned military base at Montauk provided the perfect cover. Isolated, secure, and already equipped with advanced radar and communication equipment that could be adapted for temporal research. According to the accounts, the Montauk researchers developed technology that could bend time and space, create temporal portals, and even manipulate human consciousness across temporal boundaries. The project allegedly involved experiments with time travel, mind control, and reality manipulation that pushed the boundaries of known physics. The researchers supposedly learned to create temporal windows that allowed observation of past and future events, and eventually developed the ability to transport matter and consciousness through time. The most disturbing aspect of the Montauk allegations involves the supposed use of children and adolescents as test subjects. The researchers allegedly discovered that young minds were more adaptable to temporal displacement and could be trained to navigate time travel with fewer psychological side effects. These children were supposedly subjected to various forms of consciousness manipulation, trained as temporal operatives, and sent on missions throughout history. The project allegedly reached its peak in the 1980s, when researchers claimed to have achieved stable time travel capabilities. They supposedly could create temporal portals to any point in history, observe events without interference, and even influence historical outcomes through carefully planned interventions. The facility became a temporal command center, coordinating time travel operations across multiple time periods simultaneously. But the power to manipulate time allegedly came with terrible costs. The experiment supposedly created temporal paradoxes that threatened the stability of reality itself. The researchers found themselves dealing with timeline changes that had unintended consequences, creating alternate realities that needed to be carefully managed to prevent temporal chaos. The facility became a nexus point where multiple timelines intersected, requiring constant monitoring and adjustment. The Montauk Project allegedly ended in disaster in 1983, when one of the experimental subjects, a young man named Duncan Cameron, supposedly broke free from mental conditioning and used his psychic abilities to destroy the temporal equipment. The destruction of the time travel apparatus allegedly created a temporal implosion that sealed the facility and scattered the research team across different time periods. The aftermath of the project's supposed termination left a complex legacy. Former participants allegedly suffered from fragmented memories, temporal displacement, and ongoing psychological effects from their involvement in the experiments. 5. The severum ze making experiments. The aftermath of the project's supposed termination left a complex legacy. Some claim to have been programmed with false memories to cover their participation, while others reported spontaneous recall of suppressed experiences related to time travel research. The Montauk story has spawned numerous books, documentaries, and investigations, with former alleged participants providing detailed accounts of their experiences. These testimonies describe advanced technology, temporal manipulation, and government cover-ups that span decades. While the claims are extraordinary and lack conventional verification, the consistency and detail of the accounts have kept the legend alive in popular culture. The technological aspects of the alleged project involve concepts that push the boundaries of known physics. The researchers supposedly used advanced radar systems to manipulate electromagnetic fields, creating distortions in space-time that could be navigated by properly trained individuals. They allegedly developed chairs that could amplify psychic abilities, allowing operators to mentally navigate temporal portals and influence events in different time periods. The government's alleged interest in time travel research makes sense from a strategic perspective. The ability to observe historical events, predict future developments, and potentially influence past decisions would provide enormous advantages in military, political, and economic contexts. A government with time travel capabilities could theoretically prevent disasters, eliminate threats before they develop, and ensure favorable outcomes in international conflicts. The Montauk Project represents more than just a conspiracy theory. It embodies our fears about the potential misuse of temporal technology. The story explores themes of government secrecy, the exploitation of vulnerable individuals, and the dangers of wielding power over time itself. It suggests that time travel, if possible, might be too dangerous for any single organization to control. Whether the Montauk Project represents historical fact, elaborate fiction, or something in between, it has become a cultural touchstone for discussions about government involvement in time travel research. The legend persists because it addresses fundamental questions about power, secrecy, and the potential consequences of temporal manipulation. It reminds us that the ability to control time might be the ultimate form of power, and that such power might be too dangerous for any human institution to possess. The legend persists because it addresses fundamental questions about power, secrecy. Deep within the Vatican's secret archives, surrounded by centuries of accumulated knowledge and mystery, an extraordinary device was allegedly constructed in the 1950s that could peer through the veils of time itself. The chronovisor, as it came to be known, represents one of the most intriguing claims of temporal technology, hidden within the world's most secretive religious institution, raising profound questions about the intersection of faith, science, and temporal power. The story begins with Father Pellegrino Ernetti, a Benedictine monk who was also a respected physicist and musicologist. In 1972, Ernetti allegedly revealed the existence of the chronovisor to an Italian newspaper, claiming that he and a team of scientists had developed a device capable of viewing and recording events from any point in history. The machine, he claimed, could tune into the electromagnetic traces left by past events, essentially allowing users to watch history unfold as if viewing a television program. According to Ernetti's account, the device was developed through collaboration between Vatican scientists and some of the most brilliant minds of the 20th century. The team supposedly included Nobel laureate Enrico Fermi, rocket scientist Wernher von Braun, and other prominent physicists who worked together to create a machine that could detect and decode the electromagnetic signatures of historical events. The Vatican provided both funding and secrecy for the project, recognizing the profound implications of technology that could verify historical and religious claims. The chronovisor allegedly operated on the principle that all events throughout history leave electromagnetic traces that continue to resonate through space and time. These traces, according to the theory, could be detected and decoded by sufficiently advanced technology, allowing observers to reconstruct visual and audio records of past events. The device supposedly consisted of a complex array of antennas, cathode ray tubes, and other electronic components that could focus on specific time periods and locations. The most sensational claims about the chronovisor involve its supposed use to observe biblical events. Onetti allegedly claimed that the device had been used to witness the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, providing the Vatican with visual confirmation of the central events of Christian faith. He supposedly described seeing Jesus carrying the cross, the actual crucifixion, and the moment of death, providing details that no historical record could supply. The implications of such capability would be staggering for the Catholic Church. The ability to visually confirm biblical events would provide unprecedented validation for religious claims, potentially revolutionizing theology and religious studies. But it would also raise troubling questions about the nature of faith, the role of doubt in religious experience, and the consequences of replacing belief with empirical evidence. According to the legend, the Vatican recognized the dangerous potential of the chronovisor and ordered its destruction. The device was allegedly dismantled, and its components scattered to prevent its misuse. The official explanation was that such technology was too dangerous for humanity, capable of destroying privacy, security, and the very foundations of civilized society. No event in history would be truly private if it could be observed through temporal viewing technology. The scientific plausibility of the chronovisor raises fascinating questions about the nature of time and information. If electromagnetic traces of past events continue to exist in some form, advanced technology might theoretically be able to detect and decode them. The concept shares similarities with the idea that information cannot be destroyed, only transformed, suggesting that the past might be more accessible than we imagine. The secrecy surrounding the alleged project fits perfectly with the Vatican's reputation for maintaining confidential archives and protecting sensitive information. The Church has historically been involved in scientific research while maintaining strict control over the dissemination of potentially controversial discoveries. The chronovisor legend suggests that this pattern of secrecy might extend to temporal technology. The project's supposed termination raises questions about the ethics of temporal observation. If such technology existed, it would eliminate privacy across all of human history. Every secret, every private moment, every hidden truth would become accessible to those who controlled the device. The implications for blackmail, political control, and social manipulation would be enormous. The chronovisor story also touches on the relationship between science and religion. The device supposedly represented a merger of advanced physics and religious inquiry, using cutting-edge technology to explore questions of faith and history. This intersection of science and spirituality reflects broader themes about the compatibility of empirical investigation and religious belief. Some researchers have suggested that the chronovisor might have been a cover story for more conventional intelligence gathering or archaeological research. The Vatican's extensive archives and historical research capabilities might have been enhanced by advanced but non-temporal technology, creating discoveries that seem to require time-viewing capabilities. The legend persists partly because it addresses fundamental human desires to witness history firsthand and to resolve religious and historical mysteries through direct observation. The chronovisor represents the ultimate historical research tool, capable of settling disputes, confirming theories, and providing eyewitness accounts of events that occurred centuries or millennia ago. Whether the chronovisor ever existed remains one of the modern era's most intriguing mysteries. The story combines elements of advanced physics, religious mystery, and government secrecy in ways that capture the imagination, while raising profound questions about the nature of time, knowledge, and power. It suggests that the ability to observe the past might be as dangerous as the ability to travel through time, and that some discoveries might be too powerful for any single institution to control. The Vatican's alleged involvement in temporal research reminds us that the quest to understand time transcends secular science, touching on fundamental questions about existence, divinity, and the nature of reality itself. In the complex landscape of temporal possibility, one of the most intriguing concepts is the idea that time travel, if it exists, might be regulated by some form of temporal law enforcement. This time police theory suggests that advanced civilizations have developed not just the technology to travel through time, but also the institutional frameworks to monitor, regulate, and control temporal activity. It's a concept that transforms time travel from a chaotic free-for-all into a carefully managed system with its own rules, authorities, and enforcement mechanisms. The fundamental premise of the time police theory is that unrestricted time travel would create chaos across the timeline. If anyone could freely travel through time, the potential for paradoxes, timeline corruption, and temporal warfare would be enormous. Natural selection would favor civilizations that develop temporal regulation systems, creating institutional pressures for the evolution of time travel governance. The civilizations that survived would be those that learned to manage temporal technology responsibly. The time police would presumably operate across multiple time periods simultaneously, maintaining offices and agents throughout history. They would need to be skilled in temporal camouflage, able to blend into any historical period while maintaining their law enforcement capabilities. These temporal agents would become the ultimate undercover operatives, working within the societies they're monitoring while remaining invisible to the local population. The jurisdiction of such an organization would be unprecedented in human experience. The time police would need to enforce laws across all of time and space, monitoring temporal activity in the past, present, and future simultaneously. They would face the unique challenge of investigating crimes that might occur in multiple time periods, with causes in one era and effects in another. Their case files would span centuries, and their investigations might require following suspects across multiple decades. They would face the unique challenge of investigations might require following suspects across multiple decades. The technology required for temporal law enforcement would be extraordinary. The time police would need detection systems capable of identifying unauthorized time travelers, monitoring equipment that could track temporal violations across multiple timelines, and communication networks that could coordinate enforcement actions across different eras. They would require temporal vehicles, weapons, and equipment that could function effectively in any historical period. The legal framework for temporal law enforcement would need to address questions that human jurisprudence has never encountered. What constitutes a temporal crime? How do you prosecute someone for actions that haven't happened yet? What are the rules of evidence when dealing with events that might occur in multiple timelines? The time police would need to develop entirely new categories of law to address the unique challenges of temporal justice. The personnel requirements for such an organization would be staggering. Time police agents would need to be skilled in multiple historical periods, capable of linguistic and cultural adaptation, and psychologically resilient enough to maintain their identity across temporal assignments. The personnel requirements for such an organization would be staggering. They would need to be historians, anthropologists, linguists, and law enforcement officers all at once. The training program would presumably take decades and require recruitment from the most capable individuals across multiple time periods. The operational challenges would be immense. The time police would need to coordinate their activities across multiple timelines while avoiding detection by the populations they're monitoring. They would need to prevent temporal crimes without creating paradoxes, investigate violations without contaminating evidence, and maintain order without revealing their existence. They would operate in a constant state of temporal tension, balancing enforcement with preservation of timeline integrity. The time police theory suggests that most temporal activity might be covert and carefully regulated. The absence of obvious time travelers in our society might not indicate that time travel is impossible, but rather that it's highly controlled. The temporal agents among us might be so skilled at camouflage that they're indistinguishable from ordinary citizens. Worried, they might be the perfectly adapted individuals who seem to belong completely to their time period while actually being temporal visitors. The relationship between different temporal civilizations would create complex diplomatic and jurisdictional challenges. The time police might need to negotiate treaties with other time-traveling civilizations, establish mutual enforcement agreements, and coordinate responses to temporal threats that affect multiple species or realities. They would become the ultimate international police force, working across not just national boundaries but temporal ones. The prevention of temporal terrorism would be a primary concern. The time police would need to prevent individuals or groups from using time travel to commit large-scale destruction, alter historical events for personal gain, or create paradoxes that could damage the timeline. They would face unique challenges in preventing crimes that might be planned in one time period but executed in another. The time police might also serve as temporal historians, maintaining accurate records of events across multiple timelines and ensuring that historical information remains consistent despite temporal interventions. They would become the guardians of temporal memory, protecting the integrity of the historical record while allowing for carefully managed temporal activity. The theory raises profound questions about free will and determinism. If the time police are preventing certain actions and ensuring others occur, are they manipulating the timeline according to some predetermined plan? Are they preserving natural history, or are they actively shaping it according to their understanding of optimal outcomes? The time police might be the ultimate expression of temporal determinism, ensuring that history unfolds according to patterns they consider beneficial. The existence of time police might explain many of the mysteries surrounding alleged time travel encounters. The consistent patterns in time traveler behavior, the careful avoidance of timeline disruption, and the seeming coordination of temporal activity might all be evidence of institutional oversight rather than individual caution. The time police theory suggests that time travel is not just possible, but actively managed by advanced civilizations that understand the responsibilities that come with temporal power. In the strange and beautiful realm of quantum mechanics, particles can be connected across vast distances in ways that Einstein famously called spooky action at a distance. When two particles become entangled, measuring one instantly affects the other, regardless of the space between them. But what if this quantum weirdness extends beyond space to encompass time itself? What if particles can be entangled not just across distance, but across temporal duration, creating connections that bridge past and future in ways that might enable communication or even travel through time? The concept of temporal entanglement emerges from the fundamental quantum principle that particles exist in superposition until measured. If a particle can exist in multiple states simultaneously, then perhaps it can also exist in multiple time states simultaneously. An entangled particle might be connected to versions of itself in the past or future, creating quantum bridges that span temporal gaps. This would mean that the quantum world operates outside our normal understanding of causality and temporal sequence. Recent experiments in quantum physics have begun to explore these temporal possibilities. Researchers have demonstrated that quantum effects can appear to work backwards in time, with measurements affecting particles in ways that seem to violate our normal understanding of cause and effect. These experiments suggest that quantum mechanics might not respect the traditional boundaries between past, present, and future, opening possibilities for information or influence to flow through time. The implications for time travel are profound. If particles can be entangled across time, then perhaps information can be transmitted from future to past through quantum channels. A future civilization might be able to send messages to the past by manipulating entangled particles in their time, creating subtle influences that affect the quantum states of corresponding particles in our era. This would provide a mechanism for temporal communication that doesn't require physical travel, but could still influence historical events. Consider the possibility that consciousness itself might be quantum mechanical in nature. If human awareness operates through quantum processes in the brain, then perhaps consciousness could become entangled across time periods. This might explain phenomena like prophetic dreams, déjà vu, or intuitive knowledge that seems to come from nowhere. Your mind might be quantum entangled with versions of yourself in other time periods, creating a form of temporal awareness that transcends normal causality. The quantum nature of reality also suggests that time travel might occur at the microscopic level constantly. Quantum particles regularly seem to violate causality, appearing to be affected by future measurements or to influence their own past states. As one tree, in system u system, the fold is pies. If this microscopic time travel could be amplified to macroscopic levels, it might provide a pathway for larger objects or conscious beings to navigate through time. Quantum entanglement across time might also explain the consistency of physical laws throughout history. If the fundamental particles of the universe are entangled across temporal boundaries, then changes in physical constants or natural laws would be instantly communicated throughout time, maintaining consistency across all periods. This temporal quantum connection might be what preserves the stability of reality, despite the apparent chaos of quantum mechanics. The measurement problem in quantum mechanics takes on new dimensions when considered across time. If observing a particle affects its quantum state, then perhaps observing the past through time travel would also affect quantum states in ways that propagate both forward and backward through time. Time travelers might be inadvertently creating quantum changes that ripple through history, subtly altering the development of reality in ways that might not be immediately apparent. Quantum tunneling, the phenomenon where particles can pass through barriers that should be impossible to cross, might also apply to temporal barriers. Just as particles can tunnel through energy barriers in space, they might be able to tunnel through temporal barriers, allowing information or influence to leak between different time periods. This quantum temporal tunneling might be happening constantly at the subatomic level, creating a subtle form of time travel that affects the development of reality. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that every quantum event creates multiple parallel universes. If these universes are connected through quantum entanglement, then perhaps information can flow between them, allowing beings in one timeline to influence events in another. Time travelers might not be changing their own timeline, but rather navigating between different quantum realities, guided by entanglement connections that span both space and time. The concept of quantum coherence across time suggests that particles might maintain their quantum properties even when separated by temporal distance. This would mean that quantum effects initiated in the past could continue to influence particles in the present, creating a form of temporal quantum memory that preserves information across time. This quantum temporal coherence might be what allows the universe to maintain its consistency despite the apparent randomness of quantum events. Quantum entanglement across time might also provide a mechanism for the universe to protect itself from paradoxes. If particles in the past are entangled with particles in the future, then changes to the past might be automatically communicated to the future, allowing the universe to adjust and maintain consistency. This quantum temporal feedback system might be what prevents paradoxes from destroying the fabric of reality. The possibility of quantum time travel also raises questions about the nature of free will and determinism. If quantum effects can influence the past, then perhaps the future has some degree of influence over present decisions. This might mean that free will operates within a quantum framework where choices are influenced by temporal entanglement connections that span past and future. The quantum mechanical approach to time travel suggests that temporal navigation might be less about building machines and more about understanding and manipulating the quantum foundations of reality. Time travelers might be quantum mechanics working at the deepest levels of existence, using entanglement and superposition to navigate through the quantum foam of space-time itself. In the quantum realm, the act of observation fundamentally changes reality. When we measure a particle's position, we collapse its wave function and force it to choose a specific location from all its possible states. This observer effect reveals a profound truth about the nature of reality. All consciousness and physical systems are intimately connected in ways that challenge our understanding of objective existence. When we extend this principle to time travel, we discover that observing the past might not be a passive activity, but an active process that shapes historical events in subtle but significant ways. The observer effect in quantum mechanics tells us that reality exists in a state of quantum superposition until someone observes it. Before measurement, a particle exists in all possible states simultaneously. The act of observation collapses this superposition into a single definite state. If time travel is possible, then time travelers become observers of past events, potentially collapsing the quantum superposition of historical possibilities into specific outcomes. This means that the past might not be as fixed as we imagine. Historical events might exist in quantum superposition, containing multiple possible outcomes that remain undefined until observed. When a time traveler arrives to witness a historical event, their observation might determine which version of history actually occurred. The observer becomes an active participant in creating the reality they're trying to observe, making objective historical observation impossible. Consider the implications for historical research. If time travelers can observe past events, their very presence might be determining which version of history becomes real. Multiple possible versions of the same event might exist in quantum superposition until a temporal observer collapses them into a single outcome. This would mean that history is not a fixed record, but a dynamic system that continues to be shaped by observation from the future. The temporal observer effect might explain why historical accounts sometimes seem inconsistent or contradictory. Different observers from different time periods might be collapsing different aspects of the same events into reality, creating a complex historical record that reflects multiple observation perspectives. History becomes not a single linear narrative, but a palimpsest of overlapping observations from various temporal viewpoints. The consciousness of the observer might play a crucial role in temporal mechanics. If consciousness is required to collapse quantum wave functions, then the awareness and expectations of time travelers might directly influence what they observe in the past. A time traveler expecting to see a particular historical outcome might unconsciously collapse the quantum superposition of possibilities in favor of that expected result. This observer-dependent reality raises profound questions about the nature of historical truth. If the past is partially determined by future observation, then historical events might not have definitive outcomes until they are observed by time travelers. The act of temporal observation becomes a form of historical creation, with observers from the future actively participating in the construction of past reality. The temporal observer effect might also explain the apparent consistency of historical records despite the possibility of time travel. If multiple observers from different time periods are observing the same events, their collective observations might be creating a stable historical reality that appears consistent to all observers. The past becomes a collaborative creation of all temporal observers, maintained through their collective observation. The measurement problem in quantum mechanics becomes even more complex when applied to time travel. If observing the past changes it, then time travelers face the challenge of observing events without contaminating them. This might require sophisticated techniques for passive observation that minimize the observer effect, allowing time travelers to witness history without inadvertently altering it. The quantum Zeno effect, where frequent observation prevents quantum systems from evolving, might also apply to temporal observation. If time travelers observe historical events too frequently or intensively, they might freeze those events in particular states, preventing the natural evolution of history. This would require careful management of temporal observation to avoid creating temporal stagnation. The observer effect in temporal mechanics might also explain the apparent fine-tuning of historical events. The idea of consciousness from the future is observing and partially determining past events, then history might be subtly guided toward outcomes that support the development of conscious observers. This would create a form of temporal anthropic principle, where the past is shaped by the requirement that it must produce observers capable of time travel. The collective unconscious, as proposed by Carl Jung, might take on new significance in temporal mechanics. If all human consciousness is connected at some level, then the collective observation of humanity might be continuously shaping historical events. Time travelers might be tapping into this collective temporal consciousness, using shared human awareness to navigate through time. The observer effect might also explain why time travel appears to be possible in theory, but difficult to achieve in practice. The act of attempting to observe the past might create quantum interference that makes clear observation impossible. Time travelers might find themselves in a constant struggle against the observer effect, trying to witness history while minimizing their impact on it. The temporal observer effect suggests that time travel might be less about mechanical transportation. Time travelers might need to develop forms of awareness that can observe the past without collapsing quantum superposition, allowing them to witness history without determining it. This would require a form of quantum consciousness that can exist in multiple states simultaneously. The observer effect in temporal mechanics transforms time travel from a simple matter of transportation into a complex interaction between consciousness and reality. Time travelers become active participants in the creation of history, their observations shaping the past in ways that ripple forward to influence the present. This suggests that time travel, if possible, would be a profound responsibility, requiring careful consideration of how observation affects the reality being observed. Imagine a time traveler trapped in a quantum superposition of temporal states, simultaneously existing in multiple time periods until the moment of observation forces them to collapse into a single timeline. This is the essence of Schrödinger's time traveler, a thought experiment that extends Erwin Schrödinger's famous paradox into the realm of temporal mechanics. Just as Schrödinger's cat exists in a superposition of alive and dead states until observed, a quantum time traveler might exist in multiple temporal states simultaneously, experiencing all possible timelines until forced to choose one. The original Schrödinger's cat paradox illustrates the strange implications of quantum mechanics when applied to everyday objects. A cat in a box with a quantum poison mechanism exists in a superposition of alive and dead states until someone opens the box and observes it. The act of observation collapses the wave function and forces the cat into a single, definite state. When we apply this principle to time travel, we discover that temporal navigation might operate through similar quantum principles. A quantum time traveler might exist in multiple timelines simultaneously, experiencing different versions of history in superposition. They would be neither fully in the past nor fully in the present, but distributed across multiple temporal states until some form of observation or measurement forces them to collapse into a single timeline. This would make time travel a fundamentally uncertain process, where the destination and outcome remain undefined until the moment of temporal collapse. The superposition of temporal states would create extraordinary experiences for the quantum time traveler. They might simultaneously witness multiple versions of the same historical event, experience different outcomes of their own interventions, and exist in several relationships with the same historical figures. Their consciousness would be distributed across multiple timelines, creating a form of temporal awareness that transcends normal human experience. The act of observation that collapses the temporal wave function might come from various sources. Other time travelers observing the quantum traveler might force them to collapse into a single timeline. Historical figures interacting with the time traveler might serve as observers, determining which version of the visitor becomes real. Even the time traveler's own self-observation might collapse their quantum superposition, forcing them to choose a single temporal state. This quantum approach to time travel would explain many of the paradoxes that plague traditional time travel theories. If time travelers exist in superposition across multiple timelines, they wouldn't change history in any single timeline, but would experience all possible outcomes simultaneously. The grandfather paradox dissolves because the time traveler exists in superposition, states where they both prevent and don't prevent their own birth. The measurement problem in quantum mechanics becomes particularly acute for temporal applications. How do you measure the position of someone who exists across multiple time periods? What constitutes observation of a quantum time traveler? The answers to these questions would determine how temporal superposition collapses and which timeline becomes real for the observer. The quantum time traveler might also experience temporal entanglement with other versions of themselves across different timelines. Changes made in one timeline might instantly affect the quantum state of the traveler in other timelines, creating a form of temporal self-communication. The time traveler becomes a living quantum network, connected to all possible versions of their temporal journey. Decoherence theory suggests that quantum superposition naturally breaks down when systems interact with their environment. For a quantum time traveler, interaction with the historical environment might gradually collapse their temporal superposition, forcing them to exist in increasingly specific timelines. The process would be gradual rather than instantaneous, allowing the traveler to experience the transition from multiple timelines to a single reality. The quantum time traveler might also exist in temporal uncertainty states, where their exact location in time remains undefined until observed. They would experience what physicists call temporal complementarity, or the inability to simultaneously know both their exact temporal position and their temporal momentum. This would make precise temporal navigation impossible, but it might allow for a form of temporal drift that explores multiple time periods simultaneously. The concept of quantum tunneling might apply to temporal barriers as well as spatial ones. The quantum time traveler might be able to tunnel through temporal barriers that would be impossible to cross through classical means. They might slip between closely spaced time periods, experience temporal barriers as permeable, and navigate through time in ways that classical physics would prohibit. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that all possible outcomes of quantum events actually occur in parallel universes. The quantum time traveler might be navigating between these parallel timelines, experiencing different versions of history that all exist simultaneously. Their temporal journey becomes a form of interdimensional travel, moving between realities rather than simply moving through time. The collapse of the temporal wave function might also be influenced by the intentions and expectations of the quantum time traveler. If consciousness plays a role in quantum measurement, then the traveler's desires and expectations might bias which timeline becomes real upon observation. This would make time travel a partially conscious process, where the traveler's mind participates in determining their temporal destination. The quantum time traveler represents a fundamentally different approach to temporal navigation, one that embraces uncertainty, superposition, and the active role of consciousness in determining reality. Rather than being a passive visitor to fixed historical events, the quantum time traveler becomes an active participant in the creation of temporal reality, their very existence shaping the timelines they explore. This quantum approach to time travel suggests that temporal navigation might be less about mechanical transportation and more about achieving quantum consciousness that can exist in multiple states simultaneously. The quantum time traveler must learn to embrace uncertainty, to exist in superposition, and to navigate the strange landscape of temporal possibility where all outcomes exist until observation forces reality to choose. In the vast theater of human evolution, we stand at what might be the most crucial moment in our species' history. The pace of technological advancement, genetic understanding, and cognitive enhancement has accelerated beyond anything our ancestors could have imagined. Within the next few centuries, humanity might undergo transformations so profound that our descendants would be as different from us as we are from our earliest ancestors. And if time travel becomes possible, these evolved humans might already be walking among us, carefully disguised as ordinary people from our era. The trajectory of human evolution has shifted from biological to technological. While natural selection shaped our ancestors over millions of years, we now possess the tools to direct our own evolution through genetic engineering, cybernetic enhancement, and artificial intelligence integration. Future humans might have eliminated genetic diseases, enhanced cognitive abilities, extended lifespans dramatically, and integrated technology directly into their biology. They would be post-human in ways that would make them almost unrecognizable to us. But if these future humans were time travelers visiting our era, they would face the challenge of appearing ordinary while possessing extraordinary capabilities. They might have enhanced intelligence that allows them to understand complex systems instantly, but they would need to hide their brilliance behind carefully constructed personas of normal human intelligence. They might have perfect memory, emotional regulation, and physical capabilities that exceed our limits, but they would need to perform the role of ordinary humans convincingly. The physical differences might be subtle but significant. Future humans might have optimized their genetics for health, longevity, and cognitive performance. They might have enhanced immune systems that resist diseases, improved metabolic efficiency that requires less food and sleep, and cellular repair mechanisms that prevent aging. But these advantages would need to be hidden from contemporary medical examination, requiring sophisticated biological camouflage. Cognitive enhancement would present particular challenges for temporal camouflage. So future humans might possess intelligence that allows them to see patterns and connections that escape ordinary people, to solve problems instantly, and to understand multiple complex systems simultaneously. They would need to constantly suppress their abilities, speaking and acting as if they possess only normal human intelligence, while secretly comprehending far more than they reveal. The emotional and psychological evolution of future humans might be equally significant. They might have developed emotional regulation systems that eliminate destructive emotions like jealousy, hatred, and despair, while enhancing positive emotions like compassion, curiosity, and joy. They might have transcended many of the psychological limitations that constrain contemporary humans, but they would need to perform the full range of human emotions convincingly. Social evolution would also create differences between future humans and their contemporary counterparts. Future societies might have eliminated many of the social problems that plague our era: inequality, conflict, and resource scarcity. Future humans might have developed forms of social organization and cooperation that make them naturally harmonious and efficient, but they would need to navigate our more primitive social structures while hiding their advanced social capabilities. The technological integration of future humans might be the most challenging aspect to conceal. They might have neural interfaces that connect them directly to information networks, nanotechnology that monitors and maintains their health, and augmented reality systems that overlay additional information onto their perception. They would need to function without these technological aids, or disguise their use in ways that appear natural to contemporary observers. Communication among future humans visiting our era would present unique challenges. They might have developed forms of communication that transcend spoken language, telepathic networks, quantum entanglement communication, or information transfer through shared consciousness. They would need to rely on our primitive verbal and written communication, while maintaining their ability to coordinate complex temporal missions. The motivations of future humans for visiting our era might be complex and varied. They might be temporal anthropologists studying their own species' development, historians seeking to understand crucial moments in human evolution, or agents working to guide human development in beneficial directions. They might be preventing disasters, ensuring beneficial discoveries, or simply satisfying curiosity about their ancestral period. The ethical challenges facing future humans in our era would be profound. We would possess knowledge of upcoming disasters, beneficial technologies, and optimal social policies, but they would need to allow history to unfold naturally to avoid creating paradoxes. They might watch preventable suffering while being unable to intervene directly, creating psychological burdens that even their advanced emotional regulation might struggle to manage. The selection of future humans for temporal missions would require individuals with exceptional self-control, acting ability, and psychological resilience. They would need to suppress their natural abilities, live in a more primitive society, and maintain their cover for extended periods. The psychological demands would be extraordinary, requiring individuals who can function effectively while denying their true nature. The presence of future humans among us might explain some of the mystery surrounding human development. Certain individuals throughout history have displayed capabilities that seem beyond their time: exceptional intelligence, prescient vision, or unusual wisdom. These might be future humans who have chosen to reveal small portions of their true nature while maintaining their overall disguise. The future humans among us might also be working to prepare our species for the evolutionary leaps that lie ahead. They might be subtly guiding scientific research, inspiring artistic breakthroughs, or influencing social movements in ways that prepare humanity for the transformations that await us. They would be shepherds of human evolution, ensuring that our species develops in ways that maximize our potential. If future humans walk among us, they represent both our greatest hope and our most profound mystery. They are what we might become, visitors from a time when humanity has transcended its current limitations and achieved something approaching its full potential. Their presence would be a reminder that human evolution is far from complete and that the future holds possibilities that we can barely imagine. Imagine a future where humanity has mastered not just space travel, but temporal navigation, where universities offer degrees in historical field studies, and where the most prestigious research involves first-hand observation of pivotal moments in human development. In such a future, temporal anthropology would become the ultimate academic discipline, requiring scholars to actually visit the past to study their ancestors. These temporal anthropologists might already be among us, disguised as ordinary people, while conducting the most comprehensive study of human civilization ever attempted. The methodology of temporal anthropology would be revolutionary compared to contemporary historical research. Instead of relying on artifacts, documents, and archaeological evidence, temporal anthropologists could observe historical events firsthand, conduct interviews with historical figures, and witness the daily life of past civilizations with unprecedented accuracy. They would be participant observers in the truest sense, living among the people they study while carefully documenting their observations. The training required for temporal anthropologists would be extraordinarily comprehensive. They would need to master multiple historical periods, become fluent in ancient languages, understand various cultural customs, and develop the acting skills necessary to blend into different societies. They would need to be historians, linguists, sociologists, and psychologists simultaneously, capable of understanding and adapting to any human society throughout history. The temporal anthropologists among us might be focused on specific research questions about human development. They might be studying the emergence of consciousness, the development of language, the origins of art and religion, or the factors that led to technological breakthroughs. Their research would require long-term observation, careful documentation, and the ability to recognize patterns that might not be apparent to contemporary observers. The ethical guidelines for temporal anthropology would be complex and strictly enforced. The researchers would need to observe without influencing, document without disrupting, and maintain their cover without compromising their academic integrity. They would operate under a temporal prime directive, avoiding any actions that might alter the course of history while still gathering the data necessary for their research. The challenge of maintaining objectivity would be enormous for temporal anthropologists. They would be observing their own species' development, potentially witnessing the lives and deaths of their own ancestors. They would need to maintain scientific detachment while experiencing the full emotional impact of historical events. The psychological demands would require individuals with exceptional emotional regulation and professional discipline. The temporal anthropologists might be working in coordinated teams, with different researchers specializing in different aspects of human development. Some might focus on technological advancement, others on social structures, and still others on artistic and cultural evolution. They would need to coordinate their research across multiple time periods while maintaining their individual cover identities. The documentation methods used by temporal anthropologists would be far more sophisticated than contemporary research techniques. They might use advanced recording technology that appears period-appropriate, quantum storage systems that preserve perfect copies of experiences, or neural interfaces that directly record sensory and emotional data. Their documentation would create the most complete record of human history ever assembled. The temporal anthropologists among us might be particularly focused on transition periods, moments when human society underwent significant changes. They might be studying the agricultural revolution, the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, or the Information Age. These pivotal moments would provide crucial insights into the factors that drive human development and the patterns that predict future changes. The presence of temporal anthropologists throughout history would create a fascinating paradox. Their observations might influence the very phenomena they're studying, creating a form of temporal feedback. Where the act of observation affects the observed, they would need to account for their own influence on historical events, while maintaining the integrity of their research. The temporal anthropologists might also be studying the development of time travel itself. They would be observing the gradual accumulation of scientific knowledge that eventually leads to temporal technology, creating a unique perspective on the emergence of their own field. They would be witnessing the prehistory of their own discipline while practicing it. The sociological implications of temporal anthropology would be profound. The researchers would be creating a comprehensive understanding of human nature, social dynamics, and cultural evolution that could guide future human development. Their research might reveal patterns and principles that help humanity avoid past mistakes and optimize future growth. The temporal anthropologists among us might be recognizable by their unusual perspective on contemporary events. They would have a deep understanding of historical patterns that might make them seem wise beyond their apparent years. They might display an uncanny ability to predict social trends, understand cultural movements, or recognize the historical significance of seemingly ordinary events. The academic debates among temporal anthropologists would be fascinating to observe. They might argue about the interpretation of historical events they've witnessed firsthand, or debate the significance of cultural practices they've participated in, or discuss the implications of patterns they've observed across multiple time periods. Their conferences would be attended by scholars who have literally lived through the events they study. The temporal anthropologists might also be studying the concept of historical consciousness and how awareness of their own history affects human development. They would be observing how different societies understand their past and how this understanding shapes their future decisions. They would be studying the relationship between historical memory and human progress. The presence of temporal anthropologists throughout history would mean that human development is being continuously monitored and documented by future researchers. Our actions, thoughts, and social movements might be the subject of academic study by scholars from centuries in the future. We might be unknowing participants in the most comprehensive anthropological study ever conducted. If temporal anthropologists walk among us, they represent the ultimate expression of human curiosity and scholarly dedication. They are researchers who have literally traveled through time to understand their own species, creating a bridge between past and future that serves the advancement of human knowledge. Their presence would be a testament to humanity's eternal quest to understand itself and its place in the universe. In the realm of science fiction, Star Trek's Prime Directive prohibits interference with developing civilizations, recognizing that advanced beings have a responsibility not to disrupt the natural evolution of less advanced societies. If time travel becomes possible, future humans visiting our era would face similar ethical challenges. They might operate under their own Prime Directive of Time My Now, a set of principles that allows temporal observation and study while strictly forbidding actions that could alter the course of history. The fundamental principle of temporal non-interference would be based on the recognition changing the past could have catastrophic consequences for the future. Every action, no matter how small, creates ripples that propagate through time, potentially altering the development of human civilization in unpredictable ways. The time traveler's own existence might depend on historical events unfolding exactly as they did, making any interference a form of temporal suicide. The development of such a prime directive would emerge from hard-learned lessons about the consequences of temporal interference. Early time travelers might have discovered through experience that even well-intentioned actions in the past can create disaster in the future. Also in Syria with Jafar, the prime directive would be written in the metaphorical blood of temporal catastrophes, establishing rules that prevent the repetition of past mistakes. The ethical framework would need to address the profound moral challenge of witnessing preventable suffering while being unable to intervene. Time travelers might observe wars, plagues, natural disasters, and individual tragedies while being bound by their temporal oath not to interfere. This would require individuals with extraordinary moral strength and the ability to accept that the greater good sometimes requires allowing lesser evils to occur. The Prime Directive would likely include specific guidelines for different types of temporal situations. Emergency protocols might allow limited interference in cases where the timeline is already being disrupted by other factors. Self-defense provisions might permit actions necessary to protect the time traveler's identity and mission. The guidelines would need to balance the ideal of non-interference with the practical realities of temporal exploration. The enforcement of the Prime Directive would require a sophisticated system of temporal oversight. Time travelers might be monitored by advanced technology that tracks their actions and ensures compliance with non-interference principles. They might be equipped with devices that prevent certain types of actions or that automatically intervene if they approach the boundaries of acceptable behavior. The psychological support system for time travelers would be crucial for maintaining adherence to the Prime Directive. Individuals who witness historical tragedies while being unable to prevent them would require extensive counseling and emotional support. The temporal service might include specialized psychologists who understand the unique stresses of time travel and can help maintain the mental health of temporal agents. The Prime Directive might include provisions for passive assistance, actions that help without directly interfering with historical development. Time travelers might be allowed to inspire beneficial ideas, provide subtle guidance, or create opportunities for positive change while maintaining the illusion that these developments occurred naturally. They would become temporal gardeners, cultivating human development without disrupting its natural growth. The concept of temporal quarantine might be part of the Prime Directive, establishing certain historical periods as off-limits to time travel. Moments of extreme historical sensitivity might be declared temporal no-fly zones, protected from any possibility of interference. These might include crucial technological breakthroughs, pivotal political decisions, or moments of significant social change. The Prime Directive would also need to address the question of information sharing. Time travelers might be prohibited from revealing future knowledge, even when it could benefit humanity. They would need to allow scientific discoveries to occur naturally, let social progress develop at its own pace, and permit technological advancement to follow its historical timeline. Knowledge would be the most dangerous contraband in the temporal economy. The doctrine of temporal cultural relativism might be central to the Prime Directive. Time travelers would need to respect the values, customs, and social structures of the eras they visit. Even when these conflict with their own future sensibilities, they would need to suppress their natural reactions to historical injustices and allow societies to develop according to their own internal logic. The Prime Directive might include special provisions for interactions with historical figures. Time travelers might be allowed to observe and even interact with important historical personalities, but they would be prohibited from actions that could alter these individuals' historical roles. They would need to be careful not to provide information, inspiration, or assistance that could change the course of history. The concept of temporal immunity might be part of the Prime Directive, protecting time travelers from the consequences of their necessary actions. If a time traveler is forced to defend themselves or maintain their cover, they might be granted immunity from the normal rules of non-interference. This would recognize that perfect non-interference might be impossible in practice. The Prime Directive would also need to address the cumulative effects of temporal observation, even passive observation, of subtle effects on historical development. The presence of time travelers, no matter how carefully concealed, might create small changes that accumulate over time. The Prime Directive would need to account for these unavoidable influences while minimizing their impact. The ultimate goal of the Prime Directive would be to preserve the integrity of the timeline while allowing for the benefits of temporal research and exploration. It would represent a mature understanding of the responsibilities that come with temporal power, acknowledging that the ability to travel through time brings with it the obligation to use that power wisely and carefully. If time travelers from our future operate under such a Prime Directive, they would be the ultimate ethical actors, bound by principles that require them to witness history without changing it. Their presence among us would be a testament to humanity's moral evolution, demonstrating that future humans have learned to wield temporal power with wisdom and restraint. If time travelers from our future operate under such a Prime Directive, they would be the ultimate ethical actors, bound by principles that require them to wisdom at tracking's pista. If time travelers are indeed walking among us, observing our daily lives from the shadows of tomorrow, the implications would fundamentally transform our understanding of existence, free will, and our place in the cosmic order. The very fabric of reality would be more interconnected than we ever imagined, with past, present, and future woven together in ways that challenge our most basic assumptions about causality and human agency. The first profound implication would be that the future is not as uncertain as we believe. If time travelers from tomorrow are here today, it means that at least some version of the future exists and is stable enough to support temporal visitation. This doesn't necessarily mean our future is predetermined, but it suggests that the timeline has enough coherence to allow navigation from future to past. The uncertainty that defines human existence might be more illusory than we think. The presence of time travelers would also mean that our actions matter in ways we cannot fully comprehend. Every decision we make, every word we speak, every relationship we form might be part of a larger temporal tapestry that extends far beyond our individual lives. We would be unknowing participants in a cosmic drama where our choices today influence not just our own future, but the very possibility of time travel itself. The implications for privacy and autonomy would be staggering. If time travelers are observing our era, then nothing we do is truly private. Our most intimate moments, our personal struggles, our secret thoughts and actions might all be subjects of study for future researchers. We would be living in a temporal fishbowl, observed by beings whose existence depends on our unknowing cooperation with their research agendas. The concept of historical truth would need to be completely reconsidered. If time travelers are present during historical events, then the past is not a fixed record, but a dynamic interaction between different temporal perspectives. History would be partially created by its own observers, with future visitors contributing to the events they're trying to study. The objective past would become a collaborative construction involving multiple time periods. The implications for human potential would be extraordinary. If time travelers walk among us, they represent what humanity might become, minus beings who have transcended our current limitations but achieved capabilities that seem magical to us. Their presence would be a promise that human evolution is far from complete, that consciousness and capability can expand beyond our current imagination. The question of guidance and intervention would become crucial. If time travelers are here, are they subtly guiding human development? Are they preventing disasters, inspiring discoveries, or nudging events toward beneficial outcomes? Or are they bound by ethical constraints that prevent them from interfering with natural historical development? Their level of involvement would determine whether we are truly free agents or participants in a carefully orchestrated temporal plan. The presence of time travelers would also raise questions about the nature of identity and consciousness. If beings from the future are observing our era, what does this mean for our sense of self? Are we authentic individuals, or are we characters in a historical drama being watched by future audiences? The knowledge that we might be observed by our descendants would fundamentally change our relationship with our own existence. Hive and Nomidentas, our relationship with our own existence. The implications for religion and spirituality would be profound. Time travelers might possess knowledge about the ultimate nature of existence, the purpose of human life, and the destiny of consciousness itself. Their presence would either confirm or challenge our spiritual beliefs, potentially providing answers to questions that have puzzled humanity for millennia, or they might reveal that the spiritual questions we consider profound are actually primitive concerns that evolved beings have transcended. The scientific implications would be revolutionary. Time travelers would possess knowledge of future scientific discoveries, technological developments, and theoretical breakthroughs. Their presence might explain the seemingly impossible leaps in human knowledge, the mysterious inspirations that drive scientific progress, and the uncanny ability of some individuals to see beyond the limitations of their era. The social and political implications would be equally significant. If time travelers are influencing human development, then our social progress might be less random than we assume. The gradual expansion of human rights, the development of democratic institutions, and the evolution of moral consciousness might all be guided by beings who understand the optimal path for human social development. The psychological implications would be both comforting and terrifying. On one hand, the presence of time travelers would suggest that humanity survives and thrives, that we overcome our current challenges and achieve remarkable things. On the other hand, it would mean that we are not the authors of our own destiny, that our sense of free will might be an illusion carefully maintained by beings who understand the true nature of temporal causality. The presence of time travelers would also mean that the universe is far more alive and interconnected than we realize. Time would not be a simple dimension through which we move, but a complex system that can be navigated, influenced, and potentially controlled. The cosmos would be revealed as a vast network of temporal connections, with consciousness able to move between different points in space-time. If time travelers are here, they represent both our greatest hope and our deepest mystery. They are proof that human consciousness can transcend its apparent limitations, that the future holds possibilities beyond our current imagination, and that the universe is far more wonderful and strange than we dare to believe. Their presence would be a giftness, a glimpse of tomorrow wrapped in the mystery of today, reminding us that the story of human consciousness is far from over. If time travel is possible, and beings from different eras can navigate through history, then time itself becomes not a simple linear progression, but a complex ecosystem teeming with temporal life. This temporal ecosystem would be populated by visitors from various time periods, each carrying their own agendas, knowledge, and cultural perspectives. The past, present, and future would become interconnected environments where different temporal species interact, influence each other, and create a dynamic web of causality that spans the entire timeline. The temporal ecosystem would operate on principles similar to biological ecosystems, with different temporal visitors occupying various niches in the timeline. Some might be temporal predators, using their knowledge of future events to exploit past opportunities. Others might be temporal symbionts, forming mutually beneficial relationships with historical figures. Still others might be temporal herbivores, passively observing and documenting without significantly influencing events. The food chain of the temporal ecosystem would be based on information rather than energy. Knowledge would be the primary currency, with beings from more advanced time periods possessing greater temporal wealth. Information about future events, technological developments, and social changes would flow through the ecosystem, creating complex relationships between different temporal visitors and the historical populations they interact with. The temporal ecosystem would also include what we might call temporal keystone species, individuals or groups whose presence or absence dramatically affects the entire system. These might be time travelers who play crucial roles in maintaining historical stability, preventing paradoxes, or ensuring that certain events unfold as necessary for the continued existence of the temporal ecosystem itself. Migration patterns would be crucial to understanding the temporal ecosystem. Certain time periods might be more hospitable to temporal visitors than others, creating temporal seasons where visitation peaks and valleys. The Renaissance might be a temporal summer, attracting visitors interested in art and scientific advancement. The Industrial Revolution might be a temporal spring, drawing those who want to witness the birth of modern technology. The temporal ecosystem would develop its own carrying capacity. Here are limits on how many temporal visitors a given time period can support without disrupting historical development. Too many time travelers in a single era might create temporal pollution, overwhelming the natural historical processes and threatening the stability of the timeline. This would require careful management and possibly territorial behaviors among temporal visitors. Temporal adaptation would be crucial for survival in this ecosystem. Visitors would need to develop specialized skills for surviving in different historical periods. Linguistic abilities, cultural knowledge, and social camouflage techniques. Those who adapt successfully would thrive and possibly establish temporal territories, while those who fail to adapt might be eliminated by temporal natural selection. The temporal ecosystem would also include temporal parasites, individuals, or groups that exploit the timeline for personal gain without contributing to its stability. These might be time travelers who use their future knowledge to accumulate wealth, power, or resources at the expense of natural historical development. The ecosystem would need immune responses to control these parasitic influences. Temporal predator-prey relationships would create dynamic interactions between different types of time travelers. Temporal law enforcement agents might hunt temporal criminals across multiple time periods. Rival time traveling civilizations might compete for access to crucial historical moments. The timeline would become a hunting ground where different temporal species pursue their own survival strategies. The temporal ecosystem would develop its own forms of biodiversity, with different types of time travelers evolving specialized roles and capabilities. Some might become temporal pollinators, carrying information between different time periods and facilitating the cross-fertilization of ideas. Others might become temporal decomposers, cleaning up the effects of failed temporal interventions and restoring historical balance. Temporal cooperation would be essential for maintaining the health of the ecosystem. Different time-traveling groups might form temporal alliances, sharing resources and information to ensure mutual survival. These alliances might transcend species boundaries, bringing together beings from different time periods who share common goals or threats. The temporal ecosystem would also include temporal diseases, paradoxes, timeline corruptions, and causal loops that threaten the health of the entire system. These would spread through the timeline like infections, requiring coordinated responses from temporal immune systems. The ecosystem would need antibodies in the form of stability mechanisms and repair systems. Temporal evolution would occur as different time-traveling groups adapt to changing conditions in the timeline. Those who develop better camouflage, more efficient temporal navigation, or superior knowledge management would have advantages in the temporal ecosystem. Evolution would proceed not just through time, but across time, with changes in one era affecting the survival strategies of visitors in other periods. The temporal ecosystem would create complex feedback loops, where the presence of time travelers affects the historical development that creates the conditions for time travel itself. This would be a form of temporal autopoiesis, minus a self-creating and self-maintaining system, where the ecosystem continuously generates the conditions for its own existence. The health of the temporal ecosystem would depend on maintaining temporal diversity, ensuring that different time periods retain their unique characteristics, while allowing for the complex interactions that make time travel possible. Temporal conservation efforts might be necessary to protect endangered historical periods, or to prevent the temporal extinction of crucial timeline branches. If time travelers are creating a temporal ecosystem around us, we are unknowing participants in a complex system that extends far beyond our individual lives. Our actions contribute to the temporal environment that supports visitors from other eras. We are part of a living timeline that breathes with the movement of temporal travelers, grows with their interactions, and evolves with their presence. The temporal ecosystem would be the ultimate expression of interconnectedness, in a system where every moment is connected to every other moment, where past and future support each other in an endless dance of causality and consequence. It would be a living demonstration that time is not empty space, but a rich environment teeming with consciousness and possibility. As we drift toward the end of our temporal journey together, we find ourselves facing the most profound mystery of all. If time travelers from our future are indeed walking among us, then our present moment is simultaneously their past, their study, and their origin. We exist in the strange position of being both the ancestors of tomorrow and the subjects of future observation, creating a temporal mirror where our actions today become historical events for beings who may be watching us even now. The beautiful paradox of our situation is that we might be living in what future historians consider a golden age of human development. Our struggles with climate change, social inequality, and technological disruption might be viewed by future scholars as the heroic challenges that defined our era. The problems that seem insurmountable to us might be remembered as the obstacles that forced humanity to evolve, to transcend its limitations, and to develop the wisdom and capabilities that make time travel possible. Our individual lives, with all their private dramas and personal significance, might be part of a larger historical narrative that future beings study and celebrate. The relationships we form, the art we create, the discoveries we make, and the love we share might all be elements in a historical period that time travelers find fascinating. We might be the subjects of future doctoral dissertations, the focus of temporal anthropological studies, and the inspiration for historical fiction written by beings who have mastered time itself. The technologies we're developing today, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, genetic engineering, and space exploration, might be the primitive ancestors of the technologies that make time travel possible. Our current scientific breakthroughs might be the first tentative steps toward capabilities that seem magical to us, but are commonplace to future humans. We are laying the foundation for a future that might loop back to observe its own construction. The moral choices we make today might be of particular interest to future time travelers. How we handle the challenges of emerging artificial intelligence, how we address global inequality, how we respond to environmental crises. These decisions might be studied by future ethicists, trying to understand the development of moral consciousness. We might be living through the moral growing pains that future beings remember as the period when humanity learned to use its power wisely. Our cultural achievements, the music we create, the stories we tell, the art we produce, might be treasured by future civilizations as the creative explosion that occurred when humanity first began to glimpse its true potential. The streaming services we use, the social media platforms we inhabit, and the digital connections we form might be the early expressions of the global consciousness that eventually makes time travel possible. The temporal visitors among us might be experiencing a form of nostalgia for an era they never lived through, but that exists in their past. They might feel a bittersweet connection to our time, seeing in our struggles and achievements the roots of their own existence. We might be their collective childhood, the formative period of their species that they return to visit with the mixed emotions of adult children returning to their childhood home. The questions we're asking today about consciousness, about the nature of time, about our place in the universe, might be the very questions that eventually lead to the development of time travel technology. Our curiosity about temporal mechanics might be the spark that ignites the research programs that eventually crack the secrets of time. We might be the generation that plants the seeds of temporal mastery without knowing it. The social movements of our time, the push for equality, the fight for environmental protection, the quest for technological ethics, might be the early stirrings of the mature social consciousness that allows future civilizations to handle temporal power responsibly. We might be developing the ethical frameworks that prevent temporal power from corrupting future societies. Our fears about the future, your fears about artificial intelligence, about climate change, about social collapse, might be the very concerns that motivate future beings to develop time travel, to study their past, and to understand how their ancestors navigated the challenges that seemed overwhelming at the time. We might be the generation that learns to face existential threats with courage and wisdom. The love we share, the connections we form, and the communities we build might be the emotional and social foundation that supports the development of beings capable of time travel. The relationships we form today might be the ancestral bonds that create the social cohesion necessary for species-level achievements like temporal navigation. If time travelers are here, they carry within them the genetic, cultural, and intellectual inheritance of our era. They are living proof that we succeed, that we overcome our challenges, and that we create a future worth visiting. Their presence would be a message from tomorrow, telling us that our struggles have meaning, that our efforts matter, and that our species has a destiny that extends far beyond our current understanding. As we contemplate this infinite mystery, we realize that we are simultaneously the past, present, and future of consciousness itself. We are the ancestors of tomorrow, the subjects of future study, and the creators of temporal possibility. In this moment, as these words reach you across the network of time and space, we are all part of the great temporal ecosystem that connects every moment to every other moment, every question to every answer, every ending to every beginning. The future is not a destination, but a process, and we are all temporal travelers, moving through time together, creating the history that tomorrow will study and planting the seeds of possibilities that will flower in ways we cannot yet imagine. Time is not a river carrying us toward an unknown destination. It is an ocean in which we swim, dive, and play, creating currents that flow in all directions, connecting everything to everything else in the magnificent mystery of existence. And so, our gentle journey through the mysteries of time draws to a close. We've wandered through the shadows of possibility, explored the whispers of tomorrow, and contemplated the beautiful uncertainty of temporal existence. Perhaps these ideas have shifted something in how you perceive the flow of moments around you. Perhaps time feels a little less linear, a little more mysterious, a little more alive with possibility. You know what's funny? I keep wondering if any actual time travelers are listening to this right now, chuckling at how close we've gotten to the truth. Or maybe they're taking notes about how charmingly primitive our understanding of time really is. Either way, I hope we've entertained them. Here's a simple question for you. If you could send a message to time travelers from the future, what would you tell them? If you've enjoyed this temporal adventure, please consider subscribing and giving this video a like. Your support helps me continue creating these peaceful journeys through the vast landscape of scientific mystery. Each like feels like a small message of encouragement sent across the digital cosmos. May your dreams be filled with temporal wonder, and may time treat you gently, whether you're traveling through it forwards, backwards, or standing beautifully still in the eternal now.